walk in the spirit is difficult, dealing with all of the ignorance. But in the Bible, it's still talking about the Bible. What is the benefit? Everything about you counterfeit. There ain't no rebuttal you can counter with. On the internet, you the master teacher. In real life, you powerless. Keep it real with you, I don't have time for this. I ride for this, my forefathers died for this. They cry for this opportunity, presently I possess, and right now you are the opposite. If you walk in love, you fulfill the law. Don't get involved and you ain't giving it all. If you ever think it's cool to threaten another man's family, then you already lost. Chemtrails got aluminum, heavy metal saturate the atmosphere. Manhattan Project, time travel, Mandela effect, what happened here? GMO food processing to the whole world become obsolete. A black man who believes in Jesus got my own team taking shots at me. You trespassing on property that you don't fully understand properly. All the back and forth, that's not for me, that's for ROC and the war machine. If we ride together, then we ride together. If we can't do it, I'd rather leave. I still stand on the word of God till the day I die and no longer breathe. We trapped inside the diaspora, nightmares of the massacre. Cold sweat, I'm below deck in the middle passage, just a passenger. Revolutionary hardcore, liberation, that's a hard job. You ain't ready, you a oddball. Keep your mouth closed like lockjaw. I learned trying to bring people together on the same page, make them separate. All the talk about reconciliation, when the time comes, you hesitate. If Jesus was able to sit at the table with a bunch of sinners, you very fake. Your steps ordered by the Lord, and how it was yesterday, your big mistake. We the city sitting on the hill. Guess it all depends on how you live. Guess it all depends on how you feel, and we both know that ain't God's will. I stood on what I felt was right. I don't never question if God's real. Trapped inside this matrix, I'm about to pop the red and the blue pill.
Bless them which persecute you. Bless and curse not. Rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep. Be of the same mind one toward another. Mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, said the Lord. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. Romans 12:14-21.
Peace, peace, peace. What it is, it's your brother Tyvon Swaino, a.k.a. the Orthodox Moor, a.k.a. Brother Moore, coming at you with my good brother Yahuchanan with an interesting question. My brother man hit me up earlier today and was letting me know he was getting shut down around Clubhouse. People wouldn't let him talk, couldn't have no good conversations and whatnot. And that led into another conversation about the 400-year prophecy. And I was like, you know what, bro, man, let's have a build about this. Because I think there's a lot of perspectives on a lot of sides on this whole thing, and I've heard a lot of different perspectives. Like, you know, let's just go on and have a scriptural study and see what we can find. Is there a 400-year prophecy? Is there not a 400-year prophecy? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is an open mic, so if you want to jump on the panel, anybody's allowed to jump on the panel and give their 2 cents on the topic. The StreamYard link is pinned in the chat and also in the description. So if you want to jump on and give your 2 cents, feel free to do so. With that being said, what's good with you, brother Yahuchanan? Shalom, Mike.
Hey, shalom, Akeem, man. It's been a minute since we've been live together, brother. I've been doing
that's
good.
right.
Shabbat shalom, Akeem.
Shabbat shalom, fam. That's what's up. So, I'm personally not somebody who sees a 400-year prophecy in the text, but I'm hearing a lot of people with a lot of different perspectives that do see one. And so I was hearing you flesh something out earlier. And so I definitely want to give you the floor and let you break down what you were saying. If you need me to share the screen, share scripture, whatever, I got you, fam.
Yeah, go to Genesis, I think 15 is where it starts from. I will say this, the 400-year prophecy, I see it, and I think, I won't say definitively it's America. You know what I'm saying? Because the scriptures It doesn't say that per se. Now I do believe it's, you could put America in there. You understand what I'm saying? Um, but to say definitively, I wouldn't say so definitively. You know what I'm saying? So let's look, because I was talking, and a lot of people feel like it's Egypt, and I'm like, from what I'm looking at in my studies and my research, it can't be Egypt, because they was only afflicted in Egypt for 80 years. So let's see what it starts off at. Genesis, what is it? Chapter 15, verses 13 to 15. So let's look. And he said unto Abraham, know of certainty that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation, if you got a slide for the next one, the next verse. And also that nation whom they serve will I judge, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance. Go on to the next one.
Oh, I actually got to pull up the script for that
Oh,
one.
you gonna pull up the script for that one? Okay. Because it's something also I want to focus with above too, but we'll finish this one out, and then something above I want to focus on too.
Okay, but you're definitely seeing that there's you see a 400-year prophecy. You're just not saying it's definitively America, but it also could be America, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'll give you just 2 seconds, right quick. Do this on the fly. Bop, bop. Do this right here. Bop. Add you in. New slide. Paste. Resize that joint.
Okay.
Let's go.
And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. And then I think 16 is where it stops. The next verse.
Okay. So what does it say for 16? If you got
I got my Bible with me. It says, but in the fourth generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet filled. So before we get to comment on that, it's really, let me start off with the verse. I just want to read verses 15, 1 through 5.
Okay.
So it says, after these things, the word of the Lord came unto Abram in a vision, saying, fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. And Abraham said, Lord God, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless? And the steward of my house is Eleazar of Damascus. And Abram said, behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is my heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, this shall not be thy heir, but he that shall come forth out of thy own bowels shall be thy heir. And 5 is really what I really want to hearken on, because this is the promise of the Most High gave Abraham. And he brought him forth abroad and said, lo, look now toward heaven, and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, so shall thy seed be. And Abraham believed on him, and he counted as righteousness. So that was the promise he promised Abraham. He always promised him. That's one of the promises. He promised him that he would be, a father of many nations, and that his seed and his descendants would be just too much for them to count. And the reason why I'm harkening on that is because when we go into Acts chapter 7 is the reason why I brought that up. So what I see in Genesis 15, first I see the Most High making a promise to Abraham that, his descendants will be too many to count, it just be numerous. Another thing I see is he shows them 400 years of affliction, that his descendants would be afflicted by a nation, this one nation, because I did Google to make sure it wasn't talking about nations, but it's talking about one nation, and this one nation will be afflicted. He says he will judge this nation, you know what I'm saying, and then after the judgment come on this nation, that they'll come out with great substance. But then he goes on to another time frame of where he's talking about how Abraham's gonna die, at a good old age. And then he comes back and he talks about, hey, you know what? In the fourth generation, and he doesn't say, which fourth generation. He's like, in the fourth generation, that your people will come back to this place when the Amorites, basically their iniquity is filled up. So within that fourth generation, hey, they're gonna come back. So to me, I see him really talking to Abraham about three different eras or three different, ages or whatever in that scripture as well. So I wanted to yield just in case you wanted to say any feedback on it.
So you're saying 3 different time periods there?
Right, I'm seeing 3 different time periods. I'm seeing a time period of 400 years of affliction on his descendants that this one single nation is going to do against his descendant. That I see that time frame. Then I see the time frame of him telling Abraham about, hey, look, you're going to die at good old age. That's a different time frame. And then the last time frame is basically within the fourth generation. He's going to bring them back with, around the time of the Amorites, when their sin is basically filled up into heaven, when he's had enough of their sin. The fourth generation of Abraham's descendants would come back to that land. So that's what I see.
Interesting. Okay. So you see a definite 400-year prophecy. You see it talking about one nation doing the afflicting and being judged. And you see 3 different time periods. Okay. Hold on. We got someone else jumping on the panel. Peace and blessings to Fidel. How you doing?
How you doing, guys? Big up.
Big up.
How's everybody?
Can't complain. How you doing?
Shalom.
Good. Yeah, just go ahead. I'm just I don't know the topic yet, but I'll participate if
All
I
right.
can continue. Yeah.
That's what's up. I'm going to go ahead and put you on mute right quick then.
Yeah.
So go ahead. You can keep on rolling.
Yeah, no, I just wanted the feedback. So yeah, that's what it is. I see these 3 different time frames.
Okay.
Now my thing is this: it's not Egypt, and a lot of people think it's Egypt, but I don't see it being Egypt because just things just it doesn't add up. The number of afflictions it just doesn't add up. And so when we see the 400 years and things, it seems like we always try to put the Exodus narrative on it, like soon as the 400 years happen, that the Israelites, the judgment's got to come right away, and that you got to be basically taken out of the land with substance. And so I feel like we try to put that Egypt spin on it. So let me show you why I don't see it being Egypt. I'm gonna read Exodus chapter 1, if that's okay. Which I know it's okay. Let me get to Exodus 1. And so when we read Exodus 1, check this out. The very first chapter, it says, "Now these are the names of the children of Egypt. Every man in his household came with Jacob, Reuben, Simeon." Trying to skip down. Okay, so I'm gonna go to 7. It says, "And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph." So we see during the time that basically the Israelites, they had a pretty decent life in Egypt. They didn't really have no problems. There was no beef. So until this new Pharaoh rose up that basically had no kind of relationship or rapport with Joseph, right? And he said unto his people, "Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies, and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Therefore, they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. Now, so this is when they began, when this new Pharaoh came, this is when basically the affliction had started. And they built for Pharaoh's treasure cities, is it that, what is that, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. And they were grieved because the children of Israel and the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. And they made their lives bitter, hard bondage, and what's that? And mortar and brick, and in all manner of service in the field, all their service wherewith they made them serve with rigor. And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the names of one was Seraphah, and the name of the other Phua. And he said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, see them up the stools. If it be a son, then you shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. But the midwives feared Elohim and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men children alive. And the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said unto them, why have you done this thing, and have saved the men children alive? And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not as Egyptian women, for they are lively and are delivered eerie. The midwives come in unto them. Therefore God dealt wise with the midwives, and he dealt wise, with the midwives. And the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. And it came to pass, because the midwives feared God, that he made them houses. So to make a long story short, the affliction basically happened right around the time of the birth of Moses. And that's what I want to get at, because Exodus 7 seems to be the go-to for some people who wants to, who not want to, but who believes that basically Egypt is the fulfillment of the prophecy. Let me share my screen for a second, if you don't mind. I got a couple of slides I want to show, if it's okay. Let's see.
Orthodox, may I ask you a question while he's doing that?
Shoot, go ahead.
I don't know much about DNA, but you seem to know a lot more than me about DNA, right? So when they talk about the Jewish DNA, if there is such a thing, right? So do they have DNA sample from, say, the biblical times, or what is the base sample that they're comparing it with? My assumption, my understanding is what they're doing is they have a population group right now in Israel, like the Ashkenazi Jew or the Sephardic Jew. They already gave a sample. So whoever is checking his DNA right now is checking if his DNA matches that sample, not an ancient DNA. Am I right?
Yeah. So to be clear, there is no ancient Israelite population DNA sample that Jewish genetics is being traced to. A lot of what's being used is an assumption based upon the JP58 haplogroup as the Cohen haplogroup, and even talks about an extended Cohen modal haplogroup and whatnot. However, again, that's all based upon assumption. It's not based upon ancient genetic studies or whatnot. However,
so whoever is in Israel right now, right, the population, including the Beth Israel or the Falasha, the Ashkenazi and the Sephardic Jews, they have given their sample DNA. So now if you and me check our DNA, it's going to be matched to those people to determine whether we are Israelites or not, rather than some ancient DNA, right? Or is there even like a DNA distinction between Arabs in general and Jews in general, like the Middle Eastern people?
Ask that last question one more time.
Is there like a genetic difference between Arabs and Jews, like modern day Jews, or people like, say, for example, Palestine, or somebody who's from the Arabian Peninsula? Is there like a distinction in their genetic makeup from the Israelites who are there, like the Middle Eastern Israelites?
So there's haplogroups that you can see in both populations. There's autosomal DNA you can see in both populations. The conversation about the ancient Israelite population, that one really needs to get slowed down because, like you're saying, you can take DNA from all the different Israelite groups in the Jewish groups in Israel, right? From the Beth Israel to the Sephardim to the Mizrahi to the Ashkenazi, etc., to the Maccabim. Like you're going to get this wide swath of over 30 plus different haplogroups, etc. That's if you include the limba, etc. And so that lets you
the
know.
limba is disproven, though, right? The limba is not. There is a study that was done in 2014 that says these people basically what they have is some Arab ancestry, not a specific Jewish heritage. There is a study from South Africa universities. So I think you're talking about the initial claim which was done in 2009.
Yeah, the study in 2014 from South Africa has to do with using the extended Cohen model haplogroup, where they just base it specifically off a specific form of JP58. And in that particular study, like it literally eliminates 99% of all Jews, not just the limba, like literally all Jews. Like so, there was a population of European South African Jews that also experienced a 90+% replacement with that study. So that's like if you apply that study to all Jewry, literally 99% of all Jews are not Jews. So that's not based upon the Cohen haplotype. That's based upon the extended Cohen mode haplotype. So their claim was not disproven.
But there was a statement explicitly stating that they are not of Jewish heritage based on this study. So what was that, conclusion? How do they?
So there was no conclusion. There was no conclusion that they're not Jewish based upon the study. The conclusion was that they don't connect to the extended Cohen modal haplotype based upon the study. But again, if you extrapolate that whole study, 99.9% of all Jewry does not connect to that extended Cohen modal haplotype. The extended modal. Hold on, real quick. Like so, any genetic testing that shows that you have like genetic DNA or Jewish DNA, they don't use the extended Cohen modal haplotype. They use Cohen modal haplotypes.
So what is there like a haplogroup specific to Jews?
No.
So we cannot even use DNA for this thing then, to establish. So then we cannot even use DNA to establish Hebrew heritage or Jewish heritage. Then we cannot use DNA if there is no specific haplogroup that's unique to the Jewish people. Then, right?
So again, the Cohen haplotypes. So there's more than one, right? There's over 20 different ones, etc. Because you're talking like this junction, when you're talking about a Jewish population, you're talking about a mixed multitude, right? You're not talking about one haplogroup. You're talking about a group of people who've taken in converts for centuries and whatnot, for eons and whatnot, right? So you're not going to have just one haplogroup, right? You're going to have multiple haplogroups, and you're going to have overlapping autosomal DNA, etc.
Yeah. So then okay, I see. Yeah. So what they talk about the J1 and J2, are they specific to just Jewish people or
no? Not at all. There's no, not at all. Like so, there's multiple people that have the J1 and J2 haplogroups. But real quick, I don't want to derail this conversation because this is supposed to be a conversation about potential 400-year prophecy. However, when my man is done giving his presentation, I will more than gladly entertain some more questions or whatnot. But go ahead, Yahuchanan, you got it.
Yeah, hey, can you see my thing?
Yes, sir. It says the works of Josephus.
All right, so this is basically from Josephus. So let's look. Okay, so because he's a Jewish historian, so it says they left Egypt in the month of, and don't forgive me because I cannot pronounce that word. What is that? Xenacus? I don't know. So y'all forgive me for butchering the word. On the 15th day of the lunar month, 430 years after our forefathers, Abraham came into Canaan, but 215 years only after Jacob removed into Egypt. It was the 18th year of the age of Moses. No, that's the 80th, I believe. It was the 80th year of the age of Moses, and of that of Aaron, 3 more. So Aaron was 3 more years older, he's saying 83. They also carried out the bones of Joseph with them as he had charged his sons to do. So we see basically some versions in the Bible, like the Septuagint version, and also the Pentateuch, the Samaritan Pentateuch say the same thing. That the time counted is when Abraham came into the land of Canaan, and until Joseph left was 215. Not Joseph, but Jacob leaving was 215, and then a new count starts when Jacob entered the land. That's another 215. So according to Josephus, the Israelites were only in Egypt for 215 years. So the 430 years is half of that was between the sojourner of Abraham touching the land of Canaan, and then Jacob going into Egypt. And so here it is, and this is some footnotes. This is from the works of Josephus as well. It says, why are Meshariach copies so groundlessly abridges this account in Exodus 12:40? To ascribe 430 years to the sole peregrination of the Israelites in Egypt. So basically, what it's saying is only in the Moshiach text is where this single 430 years that they're basically saying that there was a sojourner in Egypt, just give it to one nation. When it is clear, even by the Moshiach chronology elsewhere, as well as from the express text itself, and the Samaritan, like I said, the Pentateuch and the Septuagint, and Josephus, which that's what we're reading from, that they sojourned in Egypt, but half that time, and that by consequence, the other half of their peregrination was in the land of Canaan before they came into Egypt. It's hard to say, huh? So this is from Josephus' footnotes, okay? So here's from the chronological Bible that I use. This is a chronological study Bible, and here's what their footnote it says for this actual verse with 12 and 40. It says the Samaritan Pentateuch and the Septuagint reads Egypt and Canaan, which that's the case. That's what it says, Egypt and Canaan, 430 years. So we know, okay, that, you know, according to Jewish history, according to Josephus, that they was only in Egypt for 215 years. So that kills 400 years right off the bat. Another thing is this: in the Bible, it doesn't 4 generations is about 160 years. It's not 400 years. You understand what I'm saying? So the way they do a generation is between 32 years to 38 years. That's considered a generation in the Hebrew in the biblical times. Okay, let's see what else. I think that's the end of the presentation, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Then that was the end of that one. And so what I want to do, I kind of want to go into Acts, but I'll wait to see if you want some feedback, because I don't want to just
no, jump in Acts right quick. You go.
Okay, so yeah, so let's go into let me pull it up. Acts 7. And so because a lot of people like to go to that and say, well, listen, that kills any hope that you have of trying to say that, you know, basically the 400 years already had happened. So let's see. I'm in the blue letter. Let me see where it starts off at first. Hold up. So, because I believe Acts chapter 7 actually is backing me up with the children of Israel only being afflicted for 80 years. So let's see. Let's go. Okay. All right. Let's see. It says. Okay. So let's see. All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start at verse 9. You guys bear with me. Okay. Acts 7. I'm gonna pull it up on the screen. It's in the KJV. Okay, so verse 9. Let's go there. And I'm gonna hit share screen. All right, Aki, I'm finna hit the share my screen again.
I already got it up in the blue letter.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
No, you
Oh,
good.
you do? Okay, my bad. I did not know that. Let me read. So here it is. I'm gonna start at verse 9. It says, "And the patriarchs moved with envy, sold Joseph into Egypt, but God was with him and delivered him out of all his affliction and gave him favor and wisdom in the sight of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and made him governor over Egypt and all his house." Right now, there came a dearth over all the land of Egypt and Canaan, and great affliction, and our fathers found no substance. But when Jacob heard that there was corn in Egypt, he sent out our fathers first. And at the second time, Joseph was made known to his brethren, and Joseph's kindred was made known unto Pharaoh. Then sent Joseph and called his father Jacob to him, and all his kindred, 14 souls. So Jacob went down into Egypt and died, he and our fathers. Right? Verse 16. It says, "And were carried over into Shechem and laid in the spatula that Abraham bought for a sum of money of the sons of Armor, the father of the Shechem. But when the time of the promise drew near or drew nigh," right? Now listen to this, because he's really going to explain to you the promise, even in this verse. It says, "But when the time of the promise drew nigh, which God had sworn to Abram, the people grew what? Grew and multiplied in Egypt." Now remember, I told you one of the things he promised him in that verse in Genesis, was it 15, right? He promised them that what? That his seed would become what? Multiples in numbers, to where they wouldn't be able to count. And so here's that promise is coming to be. The children of Israel is getting too many people. But other people will say, well, no, what it is that the 400 years is coming up. But I'm gonna show you how this very chapter, it won't support a 400 years. Now check this out. It says, "To another king arose which knew not Joseph. The same dealt subtilely with our kindred, and evil entreated our fathers, so that they cast out their children, to the end they might not leave." Now listen to this. In which time Moses was born. So that's what I'm telling you. The affliction started the year that Moses was born, and was exceedingly far and nourished up in his father's house 3 months. So hold on, let's stop. So we see that the affliction started when Moses was born, not when Joseph was there, not when Joseph was king, right? It came a time, the affliction started when this new Pharaoh came in, right? And this happens to be the time of Moses. This is when the countdown of affliction starts in Egypt, right? Now let's see. I'm going to verse 21. "And when he was cast out, Pharaoh's daughter took him up and nourished him for her son. And Moses learned in all wisdom of the Egyptians, and was mighty in words and deeds. And when he was full 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brother and the children of Israel. And seeing one of them suffer wrong, he defended him and avenged him that was oppressed, and smote the Egyptian." Right? So, okay. Now he's 40 years old. "For he supposed his brethren would have understood how that God by his hand would deliver them, but they understood it not. And the next day he showed himself unto them as they strove, and would have set them at one again, and saying, Sirs, ye are brethren, why do you wrong one to another? But he that did his neighbor wrong thrust him away, saying, Who made thee a ruler and a judge over us? Wilt thou kill me as thou didst the Egyptian yesterday? Then Moses fled." Now check this out. Moses is 40 years old when he flees, right? So at this point in time, the children of Israel only been afflicted in Egypt 40 years at this point in time. According to the text, even according to Exodus, the story, the hardship, the affliction didn't start until around the time Moses was born. So then Moses fled. Well, let me stop, because I don't know if you want any feedback right now, Ak, or you just want to keep going.
Keep going. I'll jump in when I need to.
All right. So it says, let me see, what I stopped at? Okay, I stopped at 29, I believe. Then Moses fled as the sand and was a stranger in the land of Midian. He was a stranger in the land of Midian where he begot 2 sons. Now listen, and when 40 years were expired, there appeared to him in the wilderness of Mount Sinai an angel of the Lord in a flame of fire in a bush. So now it's 80 years. The children of Israel have been afflicted in Egypt for 80 years now. Moses had fled and went away for 80 years, right? And when Moses saw this, I'm on verse 31. When Moses saw it, he wondered at the sight. As he drew near to behold it, the voice of the Lord came unto him, saying, I am the God of thy fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Then Moses trembled and durst not behold. Then said the Lord to him, Put off thy shoes from the feet, for the place where thou standest is holy ground. On to the next one. Let me see. I have seen the affliction of my people which is in Egypt, and I have heard their groanings, and am come down to deliver them. And now come, I will send thee to Egypt. This Moses whom they refused, saying, Who made thee a ruler and a judge? The same did God send to be a ruler and a deliverer by the hand of the angel which appeared to him in the bush. He brought them out. After that, he had showed wonders and signs in the land of Egypt and the Red Sea and in the wilderness 40 years, right? So they was in the wilderness for 40 years, right? This is that Moses which the children of Israel, a prophet, shall the Lord your God raise. Keep going. I don't know if it's still going, if it talks about the deliverance. Can you go scroll down? Let me see. Okay, this is he that was in the church in the wilderness, the angel which spake to him in the Mount Sinai with our fathers, who received lively oracles to give it to us, to whom our fathers would not obey, but thrust him from them, and their hearts turned back again into Egypt, saying to Aaron. Okay. All right, so that's it for that one. So you can you can start sharing the screen. I'll see if I get your feedback. Oh, okay, 40 years, what it said. Then God turned and gave them to worship host of heavens, as it is written in the book of the prophets, O ye house of Israel, have you offered to me slain beasts and sacrifices by the space of 40 years in the wilderness, right? So they was in the wilderness 40 years. Our fathers at the time, yeah. And so here's the thing. Remember, when I was telling you about that other time frame. So we have from Moses, there was 40 years until he fled. It's one generation. The other 40, he comes back and delivered them, right? He delivered them from Egypt. Then they spent 40 years in the wilderness, which that's 3 generations. Remember what I told you. The 4th generation, he said that the Most High would return them back to the land of Canaan. If you do the math, that's when the time from the birth of Moses to the time Joshua conquers the land and give the Israelites their their portion or their inheritance, it's 4 generations. That's when they kick out the Amorites. So with that, I yield out and get some feedback from you on it.
Okay, so I'm gonna give a couple of scriptural verses and whatnot for why I don't. So for me, when I read the text, I see that the 400 years is like a past tense 430, right? So let me do this here. Do that. Let me do this. Share this one. Bam. So you already know right off rip, like starting off in Exodus, you got Exodus 12:41, and it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the self same day it came to pass that all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. So this text talks about the end of a 430 year time period, right? And then going into the New Testament, in Galatians 3:17, and again it talks about the end of a 430 year time period. And this I say that the covenant that was confirmed before of God in Christ, the law which was 430 years after cannot disannul. So for me, I see this concept of as when they leave Egypt and go into Sinai and Canaan and get their law, etc. Like that's the end of that's the ending of it all. Like when they get their covenant or whatnot, that's the end of the 430-year concept. So I see it as a past tense concept being talked about, and it being having to do, like there's some text like the Septuagint talk about like the 430 years being in Egypt and in Canaan, right? I'm one of them that believes that it has to do with the time of Abraham going in. It starts with Abraham, not with people going into Egypt, etc. But that's how I see it, right? What say you on because typically this is going to be like the first pushback someone's going to get on the 400-year prophecy concept. So what do you say to stuff like this?
Well, I would say the countdown for me or anything is about the affliction, not being necessarily just in a place for 400 years. I think you would have to show when the affliction started.
So here's my question. So where do I get the option of choosing a different date when the scripture, like, so for you, does the scripture clearly state here like it's a past tense 430 years or no?
To my hair, this one.
So in Exodus 12 and also this one here in Galatians 3, like it talks about like at the end of a 430-year prophecy, they left Egypt, or not prophecy, but at the end of 430 years, they left Egypt. In Exodus, let me go back one. Exodus 12 and 41, and it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the self same day, it came to pass that all the host of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. So that's at the end of a 430-year time period. Mm-hmm. Are we seeing that or no?
Yeah, I mean, I see that in that text, but then it's like the Most High said 400 years of affliction. So it's like in Genesis 15, we see 400 years, but here in Exodus, we see a 430 years.
Oh, okay. Let's do this. Let's do this. And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years, and also that nation, etc. Right? Mm-hmm. So as I read this could also be read that during that 400 years, you're going to be a stranger. And then also you're going to serve, not necessarily for the full 400 years, but as part of it. And then also not necessarily for the full 400 years, but part of it that you're going to be afflicted. But throughout the whole of it, you're going to be a stranger. Some of which you're going to be servants, some of which you're going to be afflicted. And so we see this concept where like you're not supposed to abhor an Egyptian because you were a sojourner in their land, the same as a stranger, right? This is the concept of being a ger, right? Mm-hmm. Like the concept, like you're literally like almost like a sojourning citizen of the nation or whatnot, right? And so we see Abraham becoming a sojourner, a stranger as well, right? Like he's a sojourner and stranger in the land of Canaan, etc. Right?
Right.
And then his seed go into Egypt or whatnot, and then come back into Canaan, like you're talking about. But like the whole Egypt and Canaan concept with that 430, like you would have to extend either what you're saying is correct, like it's a 215-year thing, and there's a gap going forward you have to fill in, or that 430 years starts with Abraham. Does that make sense or no?
No, I got what you're saying. The only thing is, it's like if we start with Abraham, it's like we have to make Canaan a part of Egypt. Then you see what I'm saying?
Why?
Because it says a one nation. It doesn't say like the nations. It says it's this one nation that's gonna afflict for 400 years.
Okay, so this is where I have to ask the question. Like, so how do the Amorites fit in?
Okay, so for me, that's a different time frame. That's within that fourth generation. So that would be to me a different era outside of the 400-year affliction.
Are the Amorites in the land when Abraham goes into the land of Canaan?
Yes.
Are the Amorites in the land when the Israelites go into the land of Canaan?
Mm-hmm. Yes, they are.
So would they be there for that full 430 years?
Yeah, I would say they would have been there maybe even longer.
So when Abraham goes into the land of the Amorites or whatnot, when I read the text, he literally makes a covenant with the people to be a stranger in the land, like what the Baal better yes, the Lords of the Covenant, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Genesis 14, is that something you see or no?
Yeah, I see that.
So he's definitely like legally like a Gad or sojourning at that juncture with the Amorites, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for you, like I hear a lot of people say the 400 years is Egypt. I'm not even saying Egypt. Me, I'm bringing up the Amorite concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, like for me, like in my breakdown of the Exodus and the Pharaoh thereof, it's an Assyrian Pharaoh of the Exodus, right?
Right.
The way I see it. But for the way I see it, that the Assyrians are like they're Amorite Assyrians. They're a blend of the two, right?
Oh, okay, I got you.
So for me, it's like an Amorite Assyrian doing the afflicting in Egypt as well. But there's also stuff going on before that, after that, etc.
Now let me say something.
Go
Now
ahead.
that concept can work if it's the Amorites, right? So that means that the Amorites would have control of Egypt and also control of Canaan.
Mm-hmm.
See what I'm saying? So if that's the case, that can work out so far.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, you would have to show the 400 years of affliction. Like, how was they afflicted?
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Like the way I read the text, like it's not specific about like the affliction being for the 400 years. It's 40 years of being a stranger, and a portion of it also being a servant, and a portion also being afflicted or whatnot. So for me, like that last portion of affliction under the time of Moses, etc., and the Pharaoh, the night of Joseph, whatnot, that's all congruent with how the text can read. So I don't disagree that the text could also be read the way you're saying it, right? I'm just saying that there's another possible reading in the way I'm seeing it, right?
Yeah.
And so the way I'm seeing it seems to correlate with the multiple past tense concepts of the 430 years that's being brought up. And so that's just how I see it. But like that's what I'm saying. Like so. Is your only pushback like the it has to be a 400 years of affliction the way you read it, or is there anything?
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie. I'm more. I guess I'm more keyed in on that 400 years of affliction.
Mm-hmm.
That's the for me. I guess that's the key. That's like the countdown.
Mm-hmm.
Like it has to fit that.
Okay, so let's rock with your. Let's say it is a 400 years in the future, and let's say it's a specific singular nation that's doing the affliction and will also be judged. So you're saying that it could be America, could not be America. Help me understand that part right there.
Well, I mean, for me, like I said, I'm not gonna say it definite because we don't see America in the text. So and the only history I really know about so far is really American history. I don't really know so much about world history. So when I look at it, and I look at the time of basically what's been going on in the Americas and amongst our people, I see 400 years of affliction with the slavery starting off, and then the Jim Crow, the disenfranchisement from getting good jobs, police shootings and killings, and just the unjust treatment that's been going on since we've been within the region. That's why I say, I can see America fulfilling the 400 years of affliction, or the Americas.
Right. So this is where I have an interesting. Well, my pushback on this is that the moment you make it America, it seems like it's almost like a dog whistle for the Negro only, or the Negro is the true Israelite, and anyone else is a fake Jew kind of a concept, right?
Right.
So I know you're somebody who deals with genetics and whatnot, and so you understand the genetic interconnectivity of different Jewish populations and whatnot, right?
Right.
And so hearing you talk about a 400-year prophecy in terms of like it could be America, like to me that's really perplexing. So as someone who deals with genetics, how do you walk something like that out? Because like it seems like it turns into a default Negro only concept.
Well, I mean, it can't just be Negro only, because you already know me. I believe that the Israelites are not just one particular phenotype. You know what I'm saying? So that's just dealing with genetics on its own. Um, so you could be black but not really be black, or you could be white but not really be white according to genetics. So it's kind of how can I say? Uh, it would be very, very you would be making a blind statement just to say the Negro only, far as being the Jew. See what I'm saying? So, and you know that because we deal with genetics. So, uh, it's kind of, I'm kind of like tongue twisted.
Yeah, that's why I need to make it make sense, because you're talking about it's definitely the way you're in your paradigm. It's one nation, right? So
Right.
the afflictions happen in the one nation. So is it all the various Jewish groups happen like dealing with in one nation, or is it just the Negro coming off the slave ship?
Well, I mean, far as the 400 years here being here in America, then I mean, it's only people I can say because I'm making it about America. It would be just basically the Negroes, to be honest with you. But we know dealing with genetics that even though the Negro, his paternal lineage have so many that we can't just say hey Negro only. Am I making sense, or I'm kind of talking about this a little bit?
It's not making sense to me, and that's what I need help with, right? Like, so
Yeah, because it's kind of hard because now we got genetics involved and not phenotype. You see what I'm saying? So if I was just particularly dealing with phenotype, it would be so easy. But since we kind of brought genetics in this situation, it's like okay, I mean, even though you look this way, you're not your lineage don't match up with what you're supposed to what they would say you're supposed to look like. You see what I'm saying?
So this is where I have the issue, right? Like, so we have the concept of like the Israelites being gathered from all four corners of the earth, right? From the north, south, east, and west, right?
Right.
So is there a particular scripture you can throw me to or like point me to that has me looking at the western portion, specifically the western portion?
Shoot, you know what? I mean, really, I couldn't give you a particular a scripture that's going to basically give you a region. It's like because let's just say we had some Egyptian Jews, right? And let's just say that they were in Libya or they was in Egypt, and they've been there being inflicted for 400 years. I can point you to that and say, okay, well here, you know, basically here's the fulfillment of Genesis 15. See what I'm saying?
So I can, if I'm gonna try to like, so here's what I'm saying. Like, I need to understand the focus on America. Like, why would the Bible specifically focus on a 400-year prophecy that focuses on just the phenotypically black Israelites, and how that works for somebody who believes that the Israelites come in multiple colors and whatnot?
Yeah, that's the thing though, because like
you feel me?
So,
You feel me? Like that's a cold one to joke right
yeah,
there.
because it's like I mean for me it's not you can't say particularly black though because it's like when you look at the amalgamation and the mixing of how we mix and amalgamate it, you can't put a color on it though. You see what I'm saying?
Okay, so who came across on the slave ships as far as like in this 400 years, like you know what I'm saying? Like who was afflicted in the 400 years in
the Negro.
But now you just told me it wasn't a phenotype, bro.
But yeah, I mean, I understand that, but it's like, okay, so we say the Negro because that's the history that we do know, right? But I don't believe every Negro that came off the ship is an Israelite too, though. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, now you done made this even more complicated. Now you done made this even more complicated. So, okay, what do you say to those who talk about like I'm gonna make it more complicated too? Like, so I've had a couple of brothers and sisters who pull me up on this, who think that there's like a rolling 400 years for the multiple different Israelite populations around the world and whatnot, and that they believe that that this one here in America is the final 400-year one. Like like this would be like the last domino to drop, and then everything starts to pop up after that. What do you say to that concept?
I don't know about a rolling 400. I mean, to me, I
Like
think
the Ashkenazi can get a 400, the Sephardic people get a 400. You know what I'm saying? We get a 400. The Mizrahi get a 400, like at different points in time.
I don't know. I mean, I don't see it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, is it possible? It's possible because the word of God can, in some way, some people do see scriptures as dualistic. You know what I'm saying? Events as being dualistic. They even say there's nothing new under the sun. Me personally, I don't see it. I think it is, and I could be wrong. You know, I think it's a one-time event that happens.
Okay, so break down the event that happens and like so from are you saying it starts at 1619?
I mean, okay, because let's just be real. I think America is talking. I'm not saying it's definitive. You know what I'm saying? And that's just, but I'm going off the knowledge that I know. So I would say, yeah, okay. Let's say it is 1619. That basically when our people got here, you know, saying our people have been afflicted. You know what I'm saying?
So in your paradigm, because everyone's got a different 400-year concept, in your paradigm, what was supposed to happen in 2019?
Well, I mean, really nothing. I mean, you know what I'm saying? The Bible, it just says we'll be afflicted for 400 years. Now, some people saying that, the judgment is supposed to come right away. I mean, I don't see the scriptures really saying that. He did say he would judge that nation. In Genesis 15, he didn't say how long it was going to take for him to judge the nation. So, but he did say he would judge the nation. And I think that's what people try to put a Egyptian concept on the 400-year prophecy. So I'm saying, like, they trying to put the concept as if like, yo, okay, the judgment's got to come, and then like right away, then the what do you call it? Then we got to leave, and then we got to come out with great substance. I don't really see a time frame when I really look at Genesis 15. I see it being very clear about 400 years of affliction. And it's clear he will judge that nation, but after the judgment, that they will come out with great substance.
So, in your paradigm, why does the Bible in those two texts in Exodus and in Galatians talk about the end of a 430-year process?
Okay. Well, you said in Galatians, right?
Yeah, 3:17, and in Exodus 12:41.
Okay, so Exodus 12:41. Okay, I think for me, I think Exodus 12:41. I think they overlook the Canaan and just focus too much on Egypt, because as clear as we could see, as I showed earlier, that they wasn't in Egypt for 400 years or 430 years, but only really 215. Plus, we see that there was only 80 years of affliction, so everything happened according to, their affliction started with Moses.
Right. So right now you're telling me what the 430 years is not. I'm asking you, what is this 430 years?
Oh, okay. So the 430 years would be basically the time when Abraham stepped into Canaan, and basically the children of Israel leaving out of Egypt is what I would say that 430 years is. It's a sojourning period between Abraham and then his descendants.
So you see this as a completely separate 400 years from Genesis 15, is what you're saying?
Yes, correct. Mm-hmm.
Is there any other text that you have to justify that concept?
Well, I would say I would have to use different versions of the Bible.
That's fine.
So, and you say when you want me to clarify my stance, right? I would say the Sumerian Pentateuch and the Septuagint is what I would say. Is why I would put a different time frame, because one says 400 years, and then the other one say 430 between Canaan and Egypt.
Right. So break that down. Like so it's one says 400, one says 430. So how does that work into your paradigm?
Okay, because one is just basically talking about a sojourning, right? And which yeah, that could be stranger, but the other one is clear that it's talking about just being, a stranger and being uncomfortable for those 400 years. You know what I'm
So
saying?
you would have so just to be clear, you do agree that a portion, like, so you're saying this 430 years is from Abraham to Moses, right?
Correct. Till when Moses takes them out, yeah, correct.
So you would agree that within that 400 years, though, there was a period of being a stranger, and a period of affliction.
Right. Well, yeah, let's be clear. We know from that whole full time they were strangers, period. It's just when I see Moses, I see 80 years of affliction and not 400 years of affliction.
No. I agree with that. I'm saying that there is affliction within that 430 years, not the whole
Correct.
430
Oh
years.
yeah. Correct. Yes, correct.
Would you consider like like Lot getting caught up in Genesis 14 part of an affliction or no?
I mean, it's an affliction, but I mean, is he a seed of Abraham though? I mean, he's a relative, but he ain't really he ain't a seed,
Got you. Would you see him in the house under the house of Abraham or no?
I mean, that's like a yes and a no for me. I mean, yes, because he was basically he was his nephew. Abraham had love for him.
Mm-hmm.
But then I say no because they went their separate ways.
Mm-hmm.
Lot kind of went to do his own thing. You know what I'm saying?
Mm. So what do you say to those that say that after the 400 years is supposed to be, I think, 7 days or 7 years of judgment?
You know what? To me, you had to assert that into the text because it doesn't really say when the judgment's going to start. To be honest with you, it doesn't say, hey, like after the 400 years, I'm going to judge them like immediately or whatever. We know he will judge that nation.
Yeah, I was going to ask this question in a little bit, but my man Blacktastic beat me to the punch. And feel free to hit the panel, Blacktastic. The link
hit the panel.
The link is pinned. Yeah,
it's more important concerning the 400 years when there were already Israelites scattered and transatlantic slave trade in 117 years
prior to 1619, which is 100% the case, and 700 years prior in the Arabic slave trade.
Yeah, tell him hit the witch club.
Yeah. So what do you say to this?
To his question?
Yeah, because I'm someone who makes the same point.
Right. I mean, to be honest with you, like I said, my mind is I'm more Americanized. So that type of world history, I don't really know. So for me, I use the countdown in 1619 because that's when they say that was when we first got here. So that's why I guess 1619 is more, kind of the thing I go with.
Yeah, my man Blacktastic coming with the Jim
Kelly. Do the Israelites already in the Caribbean and South America count, or is it only 3% of the Negroes in the slave trade brought in the USA? Well, I mean, do they count? I mean, you can say they count. Like I said, my definitive answer is I don't have one. I'm not gonna say America definitively is it. Now I believe it is, but I wouldn't say with definity like, yeah, America here, yeah, period. So yeah, we do know that our Israelite brothers in the Caribbean, basically they went through the slave trade and the affliction before we did. But here it is. The thing is we looking at a nation. That's the thing. We're really talking about a nation. So the question would be, were they afflicted? Have they been afflicted 400 years in whatever Caribbean country you want to name? Would be my question to Mr. Blacktastic.
So your question back is: would the people in the Caribbean and South America have also experienced the same slave trade that brought them? Like, so I'm confused. Like, so they
No.
obviously
Here's
got
what I'm
to be
saying.
the slave trade,
We
right?
know that they experienced it first. My thing is this: did they experience affliction? Because it's not just. See, this is the thing. We can't just think slavery. See what I'm saying? It ain't just slavery. Affliction can be, you know what I'm saying, mistreatment. It could be anything. It ain't just slavery. You see what I'm saying?
So now this is specifically a North American USA thing, right?
I mean, in my mind, it is. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, and he's right. They went into slavery before we did. But my thing is this: it's not just slavery. What I'm saying is this: what Caribbean nation had afflicted them for the longest? Because let's be honest, we know they went first, but they had more independence. They got their independence way before we did. And so now when you look at these Caribbean countries, majority of them are black, and they're not under oppression from the Europeans anymore.
I'm a little dumbfounded at the moment. I'm not gonna lie to you, bro.
No, go ahead. Guess what? What am I not being clear about?
So this is the first time I've heard you say something like this, right? Out of the many years that I've known you, and so I've heard this come out of other people's mouths. I haven't heard it come out of yours before, so I'm just kind of getting used to that right quick. Yeah. So in your brain, there's a specific special affliction that happens to the North American Negro prophesied in the Bible, right?
I mean, in some ways, yeah. Like, I'm not definitive about it. You know what I'm saying?
So what part are you definitive about? Help me understand.
I mean, I'm so definitive about
because it sounded like Taya Ministries right now. Like, I'm not saying this, I'm not saying that.
Like, yeah, I got you. No, I'm just definitive about the 400 years of affliction. That's the only part I'm really definitive about. You see what I'm saying? Like, we know it's one nation and it's 400 years of affliction.
So we know that based upon a speculative verse that we can read multiple ways.
Right.
So, okay, help me understand. Like, so what's the significance to God or for God in this whole thing? Like, so what does God do via this affliction, via the Negro in North America for 400 years? Like, what's his purpose in all this? Like, what does he do with it via the scrolls?
My bad. I'm sorry, bro. Repeat your question because I was like hearing you but trying to read what Black Tastic was saying. So let me get back to what you. Go ahead.
No, go. Let's do a Black Tastic first, then we'll do it.
Okay. So then this is the comparative suffering argument. If we don't know their history, then how can we say they didn't suffer also, and still aren't? Hold on, let me move my thing is
comparative
to us. Okay. Yeah, we can do the comparative thing. My thing is this: can you show me in the Caribbean them being afflicted 400 years? Not just talking about slavery. We know that they actually, the Caribbeans, the Israelites there, they went to slavery first before we did. My thing is this, and it's not just slavery. Can you show 400 years of affliction there though? With
that break down affliction. Help me understand like your biblical concept of affliction.
Okay, so let's do a word study on it, if you don't mind. We can pull up the blue letter and see what affliction means in the Hebrew and things like that. Because to me, affliction is not just slavery. You know what I'm saying? Affliction. Let's see. You pull it up, Ak, or do you see?
Yeah, I'm getting it right now. Hold up.
Okay, so Anah, right?
Mm-hmm.
Through the idea of looking down or browbeaten, to depress, literally or figuratively, transitively or intransitively, in various applications obey, self-afflict, answer, chasten self, deal hardly with, defile, exercise, force, gentleness. Do me a favor, go up to the biblical outline because they give you a clear picture of it sometimes too. So to be occupied, right? Be bruised with, to afflict, oppress, be afflicted, bow down, to be put down, become low, to be depressed, be downcast, to be afflicted, right? To stoop. Keep going.
All that. My phone, I was reading something else.
Mishandled, afflicted, humiliated, um, weaken oneself, be afflicted. Right. Okay. So yeah, so we know it's not just the slave concept, and that's what I'm saying. Hey, what's up, Mr. Blacktastic?
Shalom, man.
Brothers. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, fam.
Shalom.
All right. I just happened to be perusing the internet waves, like they said, the country, the internets.
Yeah.
Catch my brothers on here.
So real quick, I want y'all to protect yourselves at all times. You know what I'm saying? Punches above the waist. You know what I'm saying? When I say break. You know what I'm saying?
I'm just here to join the conversation, man, because I'm hearing I'm hearing my man Yahuchanan. You know, he's trying to answer the questions.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I have some questions based on some of the information that I'm listening to. Because one of the things I often ask others when I hear these arguments being made is they ignore the fact, and based on which date you decide to use, but either 1501 or 1502 is when we had the first slaves brought to the Americas in the transatlantic slave trade. And I feel like a lot of times the narrow focus is on the United States in particular itself. And I think that's a huge mistake because we know that only 3% of the slaves in the transatlantic slave trade were brought to North America, but you got about a whopping 40% that were taken to Brazil by most estimations. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Brazil actually has a larger population of blacks than the US. I think they're only second behind Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we say that our people, and even according to some of the documentaries that's been put out by our own community, which have actually, you know, whether you agree with them or not, well, they actually pointed to the fact that the Portuguese began first taking slaves to South America. And so we have a whole 117 years of history of black people, you know, being taken in the transatlantic slave trade before the British colonies of America actually received those 20 or so slaves in 1619, whom all were considered indentured servants that were released eventually after their indenture was fulfilled. So then my question, you know, is how is it that the 1619 date is the only date ever considered when we talk about this 400-year thing? Why isn't the 400? Because there's other dates. For instance, you have 1445 when Portugal first started when they took the slaves to Europe. They started taking slaves to Europe. They went to Europe first. Then you have 1545 when Francis de Avila took slaves to Florida, which was a Spanish colony, which is now the continental United States. So you have slaves here before the 1619 date already. And for most people, they consider them to be also Israelite descendants. And you have many of them who acknowledge that they are Sephardic descendants. And so it seems to me that when we come up with the 1619 date, and this is a tendency that I think is a byproduct of Americanism, United States Americans have a very narrow view of the world itself. And we believe that everything starts here, ends here, or is only significant here. And I even believe that a lot of our Israelite brethren here have adopted that same cultural mentality. So no other date or occurrence in history seems to be important until 1619. So we erase an entire century plus of enslaved peoples who we know also have lineage and descent from Israel, not to mention the 700 or so years before this that they were taken in the trans-Saharan or Arabic slave trade. So we got people being scattered. And I think, like I said, I heard the focus on the word nation and all of this other thing. So it's in order to try to force fit that prophecy just to the United States, Negroes taken in the to the United States, we make the United States that nation in Genesis 15:13. And so like I said, so these are some of the questions that I have, because what I've been asking for years is, how do you exclude the 117 years of slaves in the Americas and just jump to 1619? Because you would have to admit that that means that their history is basically wiped or erased. It's of no significance at all. So how does one come up with that idea, or how does one conclude that?
Okay, so like I told Moore, my mind, I don't know world history that much. So yeah, some of the stuff you're saying, I would be fall in that category. My thing would be this. My first question would be, do you think the 400 years have been fulfilled already?
No, hold on, because I ask questions, so you can't just bypass my questions and then jump to asking me questions, bro. That would be that's
okay. So I'll deal with your questions. This is my thing. You would have to show me, give me a nation in the Caribbean, because it's one nation according to the text. It's not many nations. It's one nation that is afflicting these Israelites or Israelite for 400 years. So my question would be, what Caribbean nation is you saying it is, and how long has these people been afflicted? Are they still being afflicted now?
Okay, again, that goes back to the argument I made earlier. Your whole focus is strictly on the United States because you don't know how anyone outside the United States lives. So your question assumes or presumes the idea that nobody else outside of the United States has suffered comparative to us, and that's not true. So what I'm saying is it's like shooting a gun with half the ammo. You don't have a full clip. So that's what I'm saying, brother, is Brazil is a nation. All of these nations in the Western Hemisphere were once under the auspices of other European nations. They all started as colonies. So the United States in 1619 was not a nation. It was a British colony. It didn't become a nation until 1776. All right. Brazil is now a nation, but it was a Portuguese colony. Most of the Caribbean islands, which are now independent countries, not all of them, but they were either under British, Spanish, or French, or some Dutch rule. And so So when you're asking to pinpoint a particular nation, again, you throwing out all of this other history, and you're presuming, and not without having all of the other information. And so that right there is going to present a problem for your argument to focus solely on the United States.
Well, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I was going to ask you, and that's why I was asking you, do you believe that the 400-year prophecy has been fulfilled?
Yeah, I feel like it already has been fulfilled, but I don't believe it was fulfilled in the scriptures. And
okay, so where did you think it happened? I got you. So where did you think it happened?
I believe it was fulfilled in the Exodus. All right. So
then,
I've already I've already answered that question, bro. So
I didn't. I never heard you. I never heard you say that.
Yeah, I
So
got a whole series on that, man.
Yeah, I got you. I got you. But then we got a problem because according to the scriptures, the earlier scriptures, the earlier manuscripts like the Septuagint and the Samaritan Pentateuch, the Israelites were only in Egypt for 215 years. Another problem you're going to have is according to the scriptures, the Egyptians started afflicting the Israelites during the time of Moses when Moses was born. So that only leaves 80 years of affliction, not 400 years.
Now, let me ask you a question. Where do you get where the Egyptians only started afflicting Egypt when Moses was born? Because obviously you can't. If you're going to say that, then what was the affliction that was happening at the time that before Moses is born, where Pharaoh tried to get them to kill all the baby boys?
That's what I'm saying. That was around the time.
So how do you determine that they only started afflicting them when Moses was born?
That's when they started killing the Israelite children. When the time with Moses. If you look at, let's go to, and Acts 7 backs it up. In Exodus, the first two chapters backs it up. Remember, the Egyptians and the well, I won't say the Egyptians, but because we think something different. So anyway, during the Israelites' time, Joseph was basically the number 2 guy in Egypt. When Joseph's dad died, when Jacob died, the Egyptians mourned and threw a big party. Remember, it said that a Pharaoh rose up that did not know Joseph. This was around the time of Moses being born or being conceived. Hold on, let me finish.
Go ahead, bro.
That's when they started afflicting the Israelites. That's when they started trying to make things harder on the Israelites. And we see this in Acts chapter 7. And we also see this in Exodus 1 and 2. I yield.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Let's do this. More, can you do me a favor? Let's pull up Exodus chapter 1.
Yes, sir.
Because we need to verify what you said, brother. Because I hear you quoting it, but let's look at it. And let's go to verse number 8. I see my brother Zadok in here, and I see Anonymous in here as well.
Yeah, Shabbat Shalom to all the troublemakers on the panel. You know what I'm saying?
No doubt, no doubt. Salute to the Orthodox Moor, my bro JP. Salute to brother Yahuchanan and to brother What the Hell. How y'all doing this evening?
Shalom.
Yeah, we doing
Shalom, Zadok. Shalom, Anon.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom to the family, man. I'm just happy to be on the panel.
Patio, man.
I'm just happy to be on here with the troublemakers. I'm gonna mute out and wait my turn.
Okay. Do you have that scripture? Well, I can read it. I have it also.
Which one you need?
Exodus chapter 1, verse number 8. Because based on what Yahuchanan said, he said that they didn't start afflicting the Israelites until around the birth of Moses. So let's verify that with scripture.
Yes, sir. It says, now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph.
Okay. And when does it say exactly when this happens?
No, I think this is 1525 BC. That's what I believe this is around time.
Okay.
So you saying that's Amos and Kamos?
Let's go by scripture.
You saying that's Amos and Kamos though?
Yeah, I'm saying it's Amos and Kamos because when we go to 2 Kings, we know that it said 480 years after the Israelites left Egypt. So when I look at the time, it's like 45 or 10 something when Solomon writes this. I subtract the 480 years and I get 1525. And also this is the same year that the Egyptians actually got a new pharaoh. The same year that I think Amos came in. So yeah, I yield. Go ahead.
Okay, again, because we can't show the people these timelines and everything that you're presenting, that's all supposition. So we don't know for sure. That's why I want to go to the scriptures and let's see if the scriptures verify what you say the way you said it. All right? Because in Exodus chapter 1, Moses is not born. There's no mention of him. So what we have is after Joseph dies, And we do know that he lives to be about 110. And he's 30 years old when he's brought out of prison and presented to Pharaoh. So Joseph lasts in Egypt for about roughly 80 years. So after he dies, another Pharaoh arises and takes over. Now, Joseph is in that first generation with his brethren, which means that Moses is not born for quite some time. So after Joseph dies, this new Pharaoh or whoever could rise up, because you're presupposing that there was a long period of peaceful existence, and then when Moses is born, which would have been a couple hundred years later, that's when the affliction starts. But the scriptures doesn't say that. We get the narrative begins of their affliction in chapter 1. And so after Joseph dies, a new Pharaoh arises. So there's some changes that take place in Egypt closer to the death of Joseph and further away from the birth of Moses. So now we see the affliction begin well before Moses, because even during this time, as we read further down in the scriptures, it tells you what happens afterwards in verse number 11 of how they built store cities like Pithom and Ramses. So there's a lot of building, and we know this took years, many times decades even, for this to happen, and they continue to be afflicted. So when you say that the affliction started with the birth of Moses, I don't see that backed up by scripture.
Yeah, it is actually Acts 7, chapter 17 through 19 backs it up.
Okay, so let's go there.
And it's also, I got a timeline I can't pull up. It's believed that there's maybe 60 years between the death of Joseph and the birth of Moses. And the birth of Moses. But go ahead.
Wait. You believe that there's only 60 years?
You think it's only 60 years?
Maybe about 60, 65 years. I'm saying.
Hey, let me just add this, Elder Black, and then I'll fall back, right? I just want to add this one quick point. You do realize that these people multiply and grow exceedingly twice in Exodus 1 at 2 separate times. I just want to point that out, and I'm gonna mute out. I'll deal with it on my point.
Okay, so how do you determine 60 years between the death of Joseph and the rise of Moses? Because between,
I said the timeline that I can pull up.
Okay,
so 65 years. But okay, so let's go with verse 17 and read 17 through 7.
Verse 17, where we at, bro?
Acts chapter 17 and verses 17 through 20. It says, but when the time of the promise drew near, which God had sworn to Abraham, the people grew and multiplied in Egypt, till another king arose which knew not Joseph. Okay, the same dwelt subtlety with our kindred, and evil entreated our fathers, so that they cast out the young children to the end they might not live. In which time Moses was born, and was exceedingly fair and nourished up in his father's house 3 months. So that's what I'm saying. This is going on, and unless I'm interpreting and I'm not comprehending right, this is around the time of Moses. We're doing his conception.
Okay, so let me ask you, where did you get 60 years out of that passage?
Between Joseph, what I said, the timeline that I have, it shows about 65 years between Moses and Joseph. And I'm not saying that that's like so accurate. Hold on, let me share my screen, but let me get it first.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Yahuchanan, but earlier, weren't you saying 80 years of affliction?
Yeah, I'm saying that 80 years that the Israelites were afflicted. But I'm saying that the difference between the death of Joseph and the birth of Moses.
Oh, I got you.
Okay.
You want to share?
Can I do something, Yahuchanan, if it's okay?
So when I
can I pull up a timeline if it's okay?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Brother Moore, can you do us a favor and go to Exodus chapter 6, and let's start at verse 16.
I'm pulling up right now. Real quick, while I'm pulling that up, is there anything that the good brothers Anonymous Hebrew and Zadok wanted to add right quick? Are y'all just chilling in the cut waiting to shoot everything up when it's done?
Oh no, it's all good. You know, just waiting my turn. I'm being edified. You know, seeing what I can learn and pick up. I do want to say this though. I know that a lot of times in this discussion, because I was in one of these discussions a week ago, brethren run to the Syrian text and another text that are the only ones of the ancient time to have the claim of there being 215 years. You know, they kind of break up the 430 years. They still follow the 430-year narrative, but they break up the sojourn in Egypt, and it has this sojourn in Egypt and Canaan 430 years. And so some people use that to take away from the 400-year narrative. But I want to put something out there that may be kind of foreign to some brethren. Excuse me. That when you find yourself like when the scripture tells you that the children of Israel were taken into Assyria, what does that mean? Where did they go exactly? You know, when it says the children of Israel were sent into Babylon, by the time the Persians took over the Babylonian Empire, we get to the book of Esther, Haman claims that the children of Israel were scattered in the empire of the Persians from Ethiopia to India, all 127 provinces. So the Babylonian captivity did not only take the children of Israel literally into the city of Babylon alone, but even when Nebuchadnezzar's general took about 15,000 Hebrews as slaves into modern day Spain, a lot of people don't know, you know, I can't say what a lot of people don't know. This stuff don't get mentioned, but history claims that in the Babylonian captivity, you had thousands of Hebrews who were taken into Spain by a well-known general of Nebuchadnezzar. That was still considered the Babylonian captivity. They were still considered to be, if you will, if not in Babylon proper, many Israelites were still in the Babylonian captivity itself. So sometimes the way that the scripture frames the narrative of being enslaved and oppressed but in a land that is not theirs, and that nation whom they shall serve. Well, if we're going to accept that the possibility of the Exodus being the beginning of God fulfilling what Abraham was told, and I heard you brothers, I think y'all referenced Acts 7 and 17. Stephen said, as the time drew near for the Most High to fulfill his promise to Abraham. What promise? Abraham in Genesis 15 wanted to know what sign Yah would give him that his children would even get the land, because at that time he didn't have a kid, period. And when the Most High told him to get him some animals to sacrifice, Abraham was waiting on Yah and fell asleep. And I'm arguing that what he showed Abraham wouldn't see it with his own eye, but he said, this is what's going to happen in the future. You're going to die and you'll sleep with your fathers in a good old age, but know of a surety that I will bring your children to this land after these things. That's what I'm arguing. So we can argue about why why the scribes wrote it a certain way, but we also have evidence that many of the ancient Hebrews understood the 400-year prophecy to have been fulfilled with what happened in Kemet. So we can have the temerity to say, you know what, they were wrong. They may have thought that, but they were wrong, and now come to this American narrative. But if there are any issues found with the narrative of Kemet being that 400 years, I guarantee you that there's enough evidence to shed as much light of impossibility of this so-called American captivity, fulfilling that verbatim. I just wanted to share that for now, and I'll sit back and wait for a turn to share some info.
Yeah. Now I got the map up. So it's 280 years between the death of Joseph and the birth of Moses with the thing. But let me share it. My bad. I said 65. I was wrong. Let me share the which because it's got a timeline with it.
So we're not going to Exodus 6?
Oh, I mean, I
was well, because he was saying that the time between Moses and Joseph was somewhere between 60 to 80 years. That's why I wanted to go to Exodus chapter 6, verse 16, and see if that was even possible based on what the scriptures actually say.
Okay, so according to my timeline, I was wrong about 65. My bad. It's 280 years. So according to the timeline, Joseph dies at 1806, and Moses is born about 1525, 1526. Can you see the timeline I got up, or
no?
More. I got it. You guys got
Yeah, I'm sharing the screen. I can see it.
Okay, yeah.
I can't for some. Oh, hold on, maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing. Hold on.
Yes.
Oh, here it is. You know, I got two screens up. My fault.
Yeah. So this timeline is based off of Solomon building the temple.
Okay.
That's
so I just wanted to make sure, because like I said, the time you gave me of 60 to 80 years just wouldn't work. But okay.
Yeah, I had it. I was mistakenly wrong. I thought it said 65 years, but no. Now that I did the addition or whatever, it's 280 years. So I added it up. I just subtracted 1526 from 1806. So it was 280 years between the death of Joseph and the birth of Moses.
So you're saying in between that 280 years there was no affliction?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, and then my question again would be, how do you determine that?
Because when we look at the scripture, we don't see nobody, from what my understanding, from what I comprehend, they don't start killing those kids and start basically basically mistreating the Israelites until around Moses' time, when Moses' conception is happening.
Okay, so again, I'm gonna ask you, because maybe I'm not saying it clearly. How did you determine that the affliction doesn't start? Give me a scripture to show me that the affliction doesn't start until Moses.
It says okay, I just gave you not Exodus. I gave you Acts chapter 7, verse 17 through 20. And in verse 20, it said this stuff happened around the time of Moses. Hold on, let me see. It says this. It says, in which time Moses was born and was exceedingly fair and nourished. So when the affliction and all that started, according to Acts chapter 7, this is around the time of Moses being born.
Okay, so because I'm asking these questions where I'm not trying to really be difficult. But I want to, because here's my thing. What we read isn't wrong, but many times it's how we read it that's wrong, and that's where the misunderstanding often comes in. So more, brother, if you could do me a favor, let's go back to the very scriptures that brother Yahuchanan just used, or I could share my screen and we could go to those scriptures also, because I have them up already. And so we can look at the scriptures, because it's important.
Yeah, go ahead and share your screen right quick.
Okay, that we look at the scriptures as they are, so we can see if they say what we assume that they say. All right, so Acts chapter 7, verses 17 through 20, correct?
Yes, sir. All
right, so it says, but as the time, now, so I have on the screen, I have parallel versions. So I have the ESV and the KJV. The ESV on the left, the KJV on the right. I'm gonna read from the ESV because that's my translation of choice. But we had the KJV for comparison. So it says, but as the time of the promise drew near, which God had granted to Abraham, the people increased and multiplied in Egypt, until there arose over Egypt another king who did not know Joseph. So this coincides directly with Exodus chapter 1, verse number 8. He dealt shrewdly. Now, this is Exodus chapter 1 that Stephen is giving us a synopsis of. He is not giving us dates and times. He's giving us a summary of the story in its totality, because his point is greater than dates and times. So he's telling us now exactly what the scriptures have told us in Exodus, that after the death of Joseph, another Pharaoh arises who does not know or honor or have reverence and respect for Joseph. So everything, the government in Egypt changes. And he dealt shrewdly with our race and forced our fathers to expose their infants so that they would not be kept alive. And then it says in verse 20, at this time, Moses was born, and he was beautiful in God's sight, and he was brought up for 3 months in his father's house. So I see how you're reading it is that this Pharaoh who arose after Joseph, only this Pharaoh during the time of Moses was the one who dealt shrewdly with our race, because you would have to include all of that in your assumption, and forced our fathers to expose their infants so that they would not be kept alive. Now, here's what I'll say about how I see this. There are times in Scripture where you have a person with a title, such as a Pharaoh or Abimelech for the Philistines or things of this sort, that it doesn't necessarily have to be a singular individual, because it more or less represents the position, the authority that's in place. The authority over Egypt is the Pharaoh. So you're going to have, even during the life of Moses, more than one Pharaoh that's going to rise and fall. But it never tells you which Pharaoh he's interacting with, or which Pharaoh necessarily, was here, there, or whatever. But because there's always a new one coming. They're always being replaced. All right. So the Pharaoh after Joseph says, behold, the people of Israel are too many and too mighty. Let us deal shrewdly, just as Stephen recounts. They set over them taskmasters in Exodus chapter number 1, and they begin to oppress them. And then all through Exodus chapter 1, it's given us what happens to them that leads up to Moses. It's not recounting every detail of every one of those 280 years after, like you said, between Joseph and Moses. But there had to be affliction happening before Moses and not just at the time of Moses, because this was a bitter thing that caused them to groan and cry out to the Most High. So that means this is something that happened over time. And that edict to murder or destroy the Hebrews, because there was promise on them. So they were going to multiply and increase, not just after Joseph dies, but during the entire time that they're there. So it's possible. And I'm just offering this for, and I like to hear what the others have to say, that this was a standing order, not just from the Pharaoh who was alive at the time of Moses, but perhaps for all of the pharaohs to try and reduce the numbers of these people or eliminate them. Now, that's one idea to look at. The other thing is, just because the Pharaoh decides that now we're going to start to expose these infants, doesn't mean that all the other things that happened to the people weren't happening beforehand. Maybe also it could be that they were already in affliction, already enslaved, but now this Pharaoh at around the time of Moses' death decides, hey, I got a new idea. Let's start throwing the babies in the river, or killing them. So all I'm saying is the jump that you're making in this passage of Scripture to assume that the affliction started around the time of the birth of Moses, I don't see it there in the Scripture. I think it's because the way Stephen condenses the story and the way that it's written in Scripture, that could be assumed, but I don't believe that assumption is quite correct, because there's a lot of time that often gets condensed within just from one verse to the next. It could be as much as a whole century that could pass. And so between chapter 1 and chapter 2, as you said yourself, you got about 280 years. So then we can't assume that in Acts chapter 7, where Stephen is summarizing a 400-year history, that he's only assuming that the Pharaoh, that the affliction begins when this Pharaoh comes to power and when Moses is born. You understand? Am I making sense?
I understand what you're saying, but I also know the history. What you have to understand is the Hyksos were in charge. So you would have to show me where in history where the Hyksos have beef with the Israelites. Because hold on, let me finish.
Go ahead.
So you would have to show me the beef because hold on, let me pull up my timeline. The Hyksos was the ones who was running things, and that's why the Pharaoh, because what happened is the 18th dynasty, which is the new dynasty that comes in around the time of Moses, is that new 18th century dynasty. Can you pull up my can you pull up my chart, please? More.
Yes, sir. It's up.
And this chart is based off of in this timeline, and everything is based off of off of Solomon building that temple, like I said. So look, we got to look during that whole 280 years from when Joseph dies or whatever. The Hyksos are the ones who've been running things until they get expelled. When did they get expelled? In 1542. That's why this new dynasty starts with Amos. I think it's Amos. He becomes the new ruler, and he knows the Hyksos are Semitic people, just like the Israelites. That's why when you see that in Exodus, they talking about, oh, let them not hook up with our enemies because there are many of them. That's what Amos was afraid of. They just got rid of the Hyksos. So for you to show affliction, you're gonna have to show me throughout history the Hyksos abusing the Israelites in order for your theory between those 280 years to make sense. That's what you're gonna have to show me.
Can I tap in? Can I tap in right there?
I just want to say this real quick before I lose my thought. Okay,
yeah, you go.
And then you definitely got a next thing. Now you know what it is.
So Yahuchanan, your position is also based on a hypothesis, not a proven fact. And what I'm saying is you're presenting a timeline that's not exactly accurate. It's assumed, all right, that it could be. But even other historians don't have all these dates exactly. And you're also assuming that the Hyksos are in power during this entire time and never enslaved the Israelites. So what I'm saying, brother, relative to the scriptures, you're making a huge extra biblical leap to try and prove your theory that the affliction didn't start until the birth of Moses, and there's no scriptural or biblical evidence that backs that. That's strictly a supposition. You're supposing that based on a timeline that's also not 100% accurate, but that's also theoretic. And so what I'm saying is relative to scripture, because when we're talking about prophecy, we still the scripture got to always be the final authority. And so the assumptions and all these other kind of things, like I said, we start to go outside of the scriptures, we can bring in a whole lot of theories, but we don't have concrete evidence for what it is you're saying. And so making the leap in Acts chapter 7 between verses 19 through 20 to say that because of the assumption that this particular group was in power during this time frame, that there was no beef between them and the Israelites and all of these other things. Well, the Bible itself doesn't say that the Hyksos were in power, but I understand history and all of that stuff. It's still Egypt is still the land where they're at. There's still a pharaoh on the throne. So you still get this whole Egyptian enslavement going on, or they're still sojourning in Egypt. And so all I'm saying is, brother, going back to the scriptures and looking at it strictly from the scriptures without clouding the picture with the other things, I don't think you can show me for sure that the affliction didn't start until the birth of Moses.
I'm gonna say one more thing, and then you have a problem because Josephus, the Septuagint, and the Samaritan Pentateuch only has the Israelites in Egypt only 215 years.
Well, that's not so much of a problem because the Samaritan Pentateuch, if you compare that with the Septuagint, the way that they both word the time of the children, they actually have different wording. In the Septuagint, it says, "And the sojourning of the children of Israel while they sojourned in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan was 430 years." And in the Samaritan Pentateuch, it says, "While they sojourned in the land of Canaan and the land of Egypt was 430 years." Where the Septuagint put Egypt first and Canaan last, the Samaritan Pentateuch puts Canaan first and Egypt last. The assumption is that these accounts are more correct is based on the fact that a lot of people look at the Leningrad Codex, which was dated at 1008 AD and is younger than both the Pentateuch and the Septuagint, and they say, well, that's where they get the Masoretic text, this, that, and the other from. But the Dead Sea Scrolls, which predates both the Samaritan Pentateuch and the Septuagint, don't use Canaan and Egypt in the same way. In fact, it lines up with the Masoretic text. So that means that the insertion of Canaan and Egypt, or Egypt and Canaan, depending on whether you're using the Samaritan Pentateuch or Septuagint, is not in the original text, but those are scribal additions later.
Yeah, I understand, but then you got to deal with Josephus, because remember,
you don't have to deal with Josephus.
Josephus is a Jewish historian. No, this is what I'm saying. Josephus is a Jewish historian, so I check, and many people and many scholars validate the works of Josephus. So hold on, let me pull up my thing first, just to show the audience, because I
pulled real quick before you pull up Josephus. It just so happens that one of the best people I've ever seen in terms of the biblical timeline dealing with our time in Egypt, etc., and the scrolls and whatnot, happens to be on our panel. And I know he's chomping at the bit. So, Anon, is there anything you'd like to insert at the moment?
Oh, hallelujah. Hey, peace to everybody on the panel. First off, I love this conversation. Quick question, more. Can we bring up the Genesis 15 promise real quick? Before we do anything, I want to make sure something real quick. Or Black Task,
give me just 2 seconds.
I'm not able to share my screen. That's the only reason I'm asking. Oh man.
Do your thing, Hawk, man. Hey.
Yeah, I feel bad. I love you, bro. You already knew what I was gonna say. That's what's up.
We don't agree. We don't agree. It ain't no big deal. Go ahead,
yeah, that's what's up. Okay, bet. So we got that out the way because he already knew how I felt. Like I love Yahuchanan, and I love all my brothers that believe in a 400-year prophecy. But it's several problems that we have, and more than anything, it's that history and archaeology lines up more with what we're saying. Okay, so he said unto Abraham, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation, I just wanted to get that part right. So, all right, I'll finish it. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance. The concern first is to assume that there's not a literal 400 years of captivity or enslavement going on, or even to speak to, I'll deal with first the last point that they left off with, where Yahuchanan was saying that you have to show that the Hyksos oppressed the Israelites. Well, that's actually what archaeology shows. Archaeology shows that the Israelites, or what we call the nomadic or the proto-Semites, were in the land first during the time around Joseph, like you said, around the 1800s. We get there through the Reckmeyer tomb first, right? So we would start first understanding that Reckmeyer shows a massive influx of Asiatics coming in there. So what the archaeology shows, and when I say archaeology, if you want to read this, you can go look for works by Manfred Betek called Hyksos, the capital city of Avaris. All right, and this is where it really breaks it all down. What we see happening is you have a Western Syro-Palestinian and then what we call an Eastern Semite, right? And so these Eastern Semites come in as nomads. And if I'm getting Eastern and Western mixed up, because sometimes I do, forgive me, when you go read it, if I'm wrong here, you correct me. But if I'm not mistaken today, the Eastern Semites are ones that we would say would be the Proto-Semites. They come in with sheep, They're nomads. They have a completely different culture. But then as we slowly start to see a creeping conquest of these Syro-Palestinians that come in, they come in with the same culture as the Egyptians because they had been doing trade through the Mediterranean all the way coming into that Pelusic branch of the Nile going into Avaris. So what happens is these Western Syro-Palestinians grow to power, and that's the Hyksos reign that we hear about. Manfred Tech actually uses the word colonized. He said that these Syro-Palestinians colonized the nomadic Semite that was there for centuries, their entire rule. And so where we end up getting 400 years, honestly, is before even the Hyksos grow and amalgamate. We were working in the garrisons. We were working as their shepherd, as their shepherders, their goat herders, right? They despised us. This so uh when their brothers come in, remember Joseph has already been there. I think he's 34 when he get there. He's 17 when he first get there, so he's already been there for 17 years. So the reason I say this is because we clearly see this Semite being put to work in Avaris and in places like Quantir and Tanis, which also work to make up the entire mainframe of Goshen. Goshen is not just Avaris. Goshen represents this entire area that we see in this Eastern Nile Delta that is made up of multiple sites. Manfred Tech says there's so many sites that they couldn't excavate them over 1,000 years, right? So the number of the 600,000 too, and I'm gonna bring this out in the work. We could easily hit this number of 600,000, especially when we see them amalgamated with the Nubian that is brought up from Thutmose II, which brings me to my second point. There are multiple slavery captivities or narratives in Exodus, and we see them in archaeology. The first one is, like I said, with the Syro-Palestinian. This is why me and Moore have the argument that when Isaiah talks about the Assyrian is the one that had you in captivity, right? So we see this Syro-Palestinian that oppresses him, but then we also see after the Pharaoh that knows not Moses, who we say would be Amos or Kamos, I don't know everybody's timeline, their son, either Thutmose the first or Thutmose the second, also imposes hard bondages. And this is where we get the mud brick bondage. Okay. And we also see that during the time of Amos and Kamos. So we see this happen twice. That's also important to know. So I said all this to say this. You easily get 400 years of oppression dealing with the historical timeline because, as I said, the nomadic proto-Israelite was there first, and then the Syro-Palestinian Hyksos comes in and slowly oppresses them even more because, like I said, they were already been oppressed working in the garrison and also in the turquoise mines. You can go look at that at the Hatzor turquoise mines. The other point is Acts 7 and 17, and Zadok brought this out beautifully. And I'm sorry if I'm preaching or teaching everybody stuff, but we got to get this right, right? That Acts 7 and 17 becomes very detrimental because it says when the time of the promise draws near, we got to be honest to the text. There's only one promise that we're talking about, right? There's only one promise, and that promise is that you would come out of a land that you sojourned in and was a stranger in and that you were oppressed in. Now, I'm not opposed if you want to say it's a double meaning prophecy. I'm not one of those people, but I'm not opposed when people say, well, no, it has a double meaning. Okay, I got to rock with you if you got some spiritual revelation in that space. But if we just dealing with one narrative, the narrative is clear. And I think we see it in Exodus 12, they were there 430 years. So even if we go to the Septuagint conversation, that also ascertains and counts for the time in the land of Canaan, right? But there, make no mistake, I could take you to the date of 400 years of oppression easily, just based upon the writings and the drawings that we see on the tomb of Reckmeyer. We clearly see them working their tails off in that time period. And then finally, we got to make sure that we had these timelines right, right? If you're going to start with Solomon, then that makes the Exodus happen at 1446. Like you said, then Moses will be born in 1526. So that means, as Black Tastic brought out amazingly, the entire first chapter of Exodus then covers almost 300 years. If that's the case, and then we get to the second chapter, and literally that covers 40 plus him running, so we getting into 80, right? Because it's 80 years from the time of Moses being born to the time that he then comes and brings them out. We're covering a massive amount of time. We're covering multiple pharaohs. Luckily, we've done the work to know who those pharaohs are. So even if we're dealing with the Exodus, then we're doing Thutmose III or Amenhotep II. Then we work our way back to Hatshepsut being the daughter that finds him, and even working so hard to find out that probably Senamut is the person who would be the Moses figure. The reason I say all this once again is now if we do the math deductively, right, we got 80 years from the time Moses was born, we easily have another 320 years of real oppression of these Semites, these nomadic Semites that are in the area. They get the business brought to them. Like, I'm not even gonna front, bro. Like they catch hell there because remember they're running from a drought.
So
So
Adonis, let me ask you a question. When does your timeline start? I'm not disagreeing with anything you say. The only thing I disagree is the promise that I see is that he promised Abraham, and that was coming to pass, is that his seed would be as numerous as the stars. So that's the promise that I see. But when does your timeline start of oppression? You starting with Joseph?
yeah, I'm starting like around the time of Joseph, right? So at the
Okay.
time that he's actually brought in there by what we would consider to be these Ishmaelites, right? Because remember, if the Exodus happens at 1446, 430 years from that would then take us to, I'm not mistaken, 1876. Yeah, we all did that block work. So
Adoption.
1876. So who's calling me? I'm sorry. What I'm doing wrong?
That's me, man. Hey, did you say one of the pharaohs' name was Cinnamon? Or
No,
you?
I said that Moses, I'm saying that Moses more than
Cinnamon.
likely
No,
would
man.
have been Sinemut.
You said two stripper names. You said they had two stripper names,
No.
Hot Chick and Cinnamon. I heard it, man. I heard it. So that's where we get strip clubs in Egypt. There's so many Israelites.
You ain't right.
Wow.
You ain't right.
Bring
Wow.
my
I'm
revelation out,
muting.
man.
See, I'm muting, bro. I'm muting. Hey, look, I want to point out I did good tonight. It wasn't
Hey,
me.
nah.
It
So let me ask you a
wasn't
question.
me.
So what date? What date?
Y'all
You
heard
put,
it. He said two of the pharaohs' names was Hot Chick and Cinnamon. I heard it.
hey, nah. So what date you put that Joseph went into Egypt? What's your date?
It's around 1806. You close.
You said
1806
no. I said 1806 is when he
is
died.
when he died, right? So then
But
he
I'm
was
saying, so when you put him in Egypt,
1806 when he died, he's there around 110 years. So then we go back. I don't got all my notes in front of me. I don't want to say the wrong date, but like I said, if we doing
would you say
430, I put
1899?
we getting close, right? So and I'm gonna tell you why we have issues is because it depends on how you're dating. It depends on what chronology you're going with.
We probably using
So,
the same chronology because you
well,
know I'm basing it off of the Solomon thing.
right, but unfortunately, what happens is, so I ask you this then, okay? So, what date do you have like Thutmose the third reigning? Because I
Almost the
don't mean to
third
be
reigning,
funny.
I got him reigning around shoot, about what, 1446?
That's the end of his reign. I'm sure that's what they got. You got that Bible dot ca or Bible.org timeline.
Art, no, biblical archaeology
Yeah, biblical archaeology.
is what I'm going by. Because it says
Yeah,
Moses leaves Egypt at 1446, right?
right,
So
right.
that's
So
his
that's
end of
that's the
his reign.
Exodus.
So his so about 1485, I would say 1485 BC, I would say about Tutmos the third.
Okay. So then he's co-regent a little bit before that, but
Mhm.
so here's the amazing part, right? Senamut disappears around 1485, 1488, somewhere in that time frame. We don't even know where his body is to this day. They scraped him and Hatshepsut off the walls, and I have a whole presentation on this. But the point that I'm making is this: if we saying that the Exodus is 1480 is 1446.
1446, yeah.
Right. So then that takes us. So if we add in 400, that would automatically put us at 1846. Then you add another 30, that puts us at 1876. So the Bible is saying, according to the Bible, especially if we're going off the Solomon narrative, like you said, right? So we're saying 4 years in the Solomon reign, which is around 966 BCE. We have 480, years or whatever it says to that. That puts us at 1446. So then we get to 1446. We add 430 to that. That puts us at 1876,
But put it like this,
right?
from what you're doing, I calculate is 453 years. If you're going off of when Joseph entered into Egypt, that would be 453 years.
Okay, yeah. So then we could take it. We could take it to, because I mean, like the Septuagint says, the time that they're in Haran. So I'm really going off the time, whatever time they're starting. Abraham already sojourning in Haran, and then adding that time to Joseph coming in. Then that's how you end up with your 480 years. Like I said, I don't got my notes in front of me, so I don't give you. I
453.
can't.
Yeah,
I
it's
can't give you. I can't give you the exact date. But I'm saying I can give you. I can give you 430 sitting down, like I said, from 1446 to 1876. So
Question.
whatever's happening, I'll wrap up right here. So whatever's happening in 1876, that's the time that time frame starts. I don't care what you put there, right? But
Mhm.
that, according to the biblical narrative, that's the time frame that starts. Go ahead, Zay. Shout out to you too, big bro.
Hey, question right quick. If we can accept that Daniel, even though the text alleges that he was third in the realm of Babylon in importance to the king, we would still consider him a captive. We would still consider him oppressed, and we will still consider him in bondage, even though he held such a high position in the Babylonian government. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who were children of the Israelite aristocracy, who were in captivity, lived lives that would probably be similar to ours, if not even possibly better financially as individuals. So one thing that I think we have to remember is that the text doesn't talk about necessarily a nation being oppressed more than the Most High is telling in Genesis. He's telling Abram that your seed will go through these things in the land that is theirs. I mean, in a land that's not theirs. And in some texts, it says they will be enslaved and oppressed. All of that doesn't have to happen at one time. They can go through moments of oppression, moments where it's lighter. Then they can go through moments of great peril and even enslavement. And then moments where you feel in the oppression of the place, but you're no longer enslaved like you were at another time. And the reason why I say that is because if this American narrative is supposed to fit that captivity, and if I was talking with some brethren last week who were putting a lot of stock into that 1619 to 2019 narrative when the Trump administration signed that declaration. But the declaration says it marks 400 years of African American presence in the English colonies. That's what it says. I'm arguing that African American presence in the English colonies for 400 years, I guess, is riddled with different times. All that time frame, all the oppression ain't equal. Even when the 20 or so slaves, who, as far as I was told, eventually brought their freedom. A lot of people don't talk that about them 20 who came to what was that?
Jamestown. I'm with you. Keep
Yeah.
going.
When
Yeah, you
yes,
100% on it. Yeah, because we
they
forget these slave owners in Virginia, right? We forget about all these black slave owners in Virginia. That's all.
Anthony,
not only do we forget about them, but we forget about free blacks in Virginia, and that those individuals, history records, as far as I know, those 20 or so slaves who came to Cape Point or Point Comfort or whatever in Jamestown, Virginia, they actually eventually brought their freedom.
right.
It wasn't until 50 years later that slave codes were passed when they started to outlaw interracial marriage and stuff like that, because now the British colonies in the New World were participating in the transatlantic slave trade. They were just joining in to bring people here because the Portuguese, the Spanish, and the French already had a head start. A lot of people don't want to admit this. And if we can admit that, then we're going to have to admit that in 1565, that the Spanish part of
Was
what we call
already
Florida
setting up
today,
shop in Florida. Right, brother. Bring that out.
St. Augustine, Florida, which is the oldest American city, not Virginia or the English colonies, but the Spanish colony in Florida had, just like 20 Negroes came on boats to Jamestown, Virginia, in the English part of the continent. Why they don't talk about in 1565 the slaves that were brought into St. Augustine, Florida, who had to help chop wood and work the fields and help build the forts for the Spanish fleet on the coast of Florida. If this is about Abraham's seed, then we don't get to dictate, oh, these are the Abraham seed we want to start the count with. It ain't. There was no such thing as the United States. The United States is a ratified document that establishes a corporation for the purpose of borrowing money from European banks to build this place up, because they didn't have the finances themselves after the Revolutionary War. When the banks of Europe said we don't just lend to people, they told Franklin and them, y'all gotta form an LLC. And the United States of America was created on paper. So who gets to dictate that the English colonies in 1619, since that's what they want to point to, that's what count the start of the descendants of Abraham coming to this quote unquote being strangers in the land that's not theirs, when they got brethren who were here almost 60 years earlier than them at the southern tip of this place. It's just, I'm telling y'all, it just don't add up. If people want to go to a 400-year document, and I heard y'all brothers talking about the Hyksos and all of that, how come we don't go to the Ramesses stele that marked the 400 years of Semitic presence in Kemet then? So, and then how come we don't accept that Josephus? Wait, hold on. I'll end it right here. Just for now, just the concept of the 400 years. I also want to know who the hell the Amorites are in America. And I'm gonna read this right here. This is in chapter 9 of the Antiquities of the Jews, where Josephus claims this. This man says that they became abusive to the Israelites, contrived many ways of afflicting them, enjoined them to cut a great number of channels for the river, to build walls for their cities and ramparts, that they might restrain the river and hinder its waters from stagnating upon its running over its banks. They set them also to build pyramids, and by all this they wore them out and forced them to learn all sorts of mechanical arts and to accustom themselves to hard labor. And 400 years did they spend under these afflictions as they strove against one another to get the mastery. So the Israelites became so accustomed to living the Kemetic life like we live the American life, that they started to compete with each other to be in the various labors and mechanical arts and laborers fields of Kemet. And they were no longer just a shepherd people. All I'm going to say is this. If I don't have to have every single date and this, that, and the third, it's really not that important, because we're going to have to, like a brother told me last week, in some instances, he rock with Josephus, and in some instances, he don't. And for his argument to stay fit, he had to shoot down an understanding that at least would have been the education that Josephus received as a Levite from the house of Kohath. He was a cousin to John the Baptist, same exact family. So all I can say is that if Josephus can claim that they went under this for 400 years, then because no one can ask, well, how did Josephus have that claim? I don't have the answer, but at least we got proof that in the times of Yeshua and them, this would have been the common teaching to Israelites, that the children of Israel suffered for 400 years in Kemet. I'll digress for now.
Okay.
I just want to add one piece. I just want to add one quick piece. Because we actually do have enough archaeological evidence to prove what Josephus said at this point. I mean, like I said, we easily prove that these Semites were in there being oppressed, at least 18. Yahuchanan says 1806.
No,
I
I
know
said Joseph died 1806.
dies 1806, right?
Joseph
So
enters in the land.
okay, right.
about 1899, I think.
So this is so this is perfect, right? So I mean, we clearly see, and what would have happened was they would have really started to feel the pressure during the time of famine, right? That's really where it starts to get hard, and that's what we see. And if you really go back and look at it, I want to say it's so Beckham had would have been the best character for Joseph because he's the vizier for the two pharaohs. You got the pharaoh for the time of plenty, and then the pharaoh for the time of famine, and he's right there in between them both, right? And the reason that this once again becomes important is the walls of Kemet bear witness to them inflicting this bondage on these Semites. And it's right in that time period, right in that time frame, right? I don't want to say the wrong dates right now because like I'm not looking at my notes, but it lines up perfect to what Josephus said. And I also agree sometimes we deal with Josephus correctly, sometimes we don't, but that's every historian. I'm gonna land right here. That's every historian. We don't agree 100% with any historian, from Manetho to Cambyses. Doesn't matter. Right, I yield.
Hey, now I put my email in the chat. Hey, send me those things on the Hyksos basically oppressing the the Semites or the proto Semites. Hey, I
Yeah, I got
tried
you.
to send you that timeline, Mr. Blacktastic, but for some reason you must have gave me the wrong one because I was gonna send you where I got this timeline from because that's what you had wanted, right, Mr.
Yeah, no,
Blacktastic?
that email address is correct. I thought
I tried to put. I had copied and pasted DRIJ at Gmail, and I tried to send it, and it was like it won't let me send it. It's talking about add the address in the field was not
you
recognized.
share my email publicly, man. My baby mama might be watching this, bro.
My
Now she
bad, bro.
find me.
It wouldn't.
Best with you, man. I'm
I tell
saying,
you what. Go ahead. Listen,
it's
I put my
fun.
email.
It's fun, man.
Now
But
listen. I put my email in the thing.
Fantastic is wild of
Just send me, hey, Mr. Black Tester. Just send it to Monty Portland at Gmail. I got it in the thing, and just send.
I'm gonna email you from
And I'm
that.
gonna send you the thing. Yeah, I'm gonna
You
send
get
it back.
send it right
Yeah.
back.
So I never thought of it as that. Now, so for me, you know what I'm saying. I look at the Israel, and you know what I'm saying. Like I said, I was never had a definitive answer, or I'm not dogmatic about it. Y'all gave me some information to look into, basically, maybe have to reassess. You know what I'm saying? My thoughts on the 400-year prophecy, because I never thought of it being fulfilled in Egypt. To be honest with you, I thought the way I looked at it, they in Egypt for 215 years, and they're counting from when Abraham steps into Canaan. So, you know what I'm saying? And then I was looking at them as being afflicted only 80 years. So, I mean, with Anos information, you gave me some stuff to actually look at and to consider. So, I mean, if you're going to start with a timeline of Joseph, then I would say there's no doubt that, yeah, okay, you know, that's a 400 years or more affliction. But I never counted or looked at it from Joseph's timeline because when I see Joseph being the number two dude in Egypt, you know what I'm saying, and then the way they were kicking it with the Egyptians, I didn't look at that as affliction. So you know, hey, I can digress and say, hey, I maybe I got it wrong. I need to go back and relook and do some studying on this.
Hey, this is good. This is a good discussion, man. You guys, I was listening to the smokalytic one earlier. Um, Talk about if a man don't lotion his feet, he can't eat on his channel, and then I came over here with you brothers in the 400-year thing. So I'm getting a full meal here on tonight, and I'm hearing some great information. And I like what Zadok and bro, why you change your name to the smokalytic? That threw me off. But I guess that ain't no different than my screen name. but Brother Zadok and Edon brought out some excellent information, and these are good discussions. And I know Moore is always he's like a private investigator. He's always looking up something. So I'm just glad to be a part of the discussion. And shout out to all the brothers and sisters and listeners in the chat as well, because there are a lot of questions that come up And I have, like I said, several questions that I asked some time ago. And I was having a discussion with another Moray today. And so many people, even those who oppose the 400-year prophecy, still, I think these timelines would help them, because even some of them come up with other theories and hypotheses. Like you hear people talk about the affliction began with Ishmael picking on Isaac. And I had to explain why I disagree with that theory as well. And so I think, like I said, this is a good discussion. And I would like to get, like I said, those timelines, myself. I have some timelines, but I want to do some comparison, and some more in-depth study with the things that I've heard here. Because what Anon said, Anonymous said, and what Zadok said is what I agree with. And that's what I was saying earlier about the scriptures. The scriptures oftentimes condense a large amount of time between 1 and 2 verses. And when we're reading the scriptures, we can oftentimes think everything happened right away or just that quickly. From one chapter to the next could be 100 years. Just like when we're reading the Gospels, all that stuff didn't happen one time right after the other. It happened over a period of the 3.5 years that we assume that, Christ, or that is believed that Christ was on the earth doing his ministries with the 12 apostles. But many times people think that all those events happen one right after the other. That's not always the case.
Hey, Moore, if you could
I think something
repost,
to consider. Go ahead,
Moore, if you
JP.
could repost the link, I'd be real. Moore, if you could repost the link, and then I'll share this Avaris PDF so everybody can have that.
Hey, yeah, send it to my email. Not the virus thing. Is the one you telling me about the Hyksos?
Yeah, that's all of it's in there. It's Avaris, capital of Hyksos. Like
All right.
it's got that information in there. Yeah.
All right.
Hey, one thing about the Shepherd Kings is it's kind of interesting the way we even view history. History is usually told by the ones who have conquered, right? It's never necessarily told in any meaningful way where the world pays attention by those who have been conquered. And one thing about the Hyksos is, if it's true that they had an almost 2-century run of having rule over the land, much of their work, if they chronicled themselves and gave detail like in a Ramessaic way, that's gone. So
Right.
you really only know about them in some description of them from those who say they came, took over our land, they had a run, then eventually such and such rose up and got them. I think it's Narmer or somebody. They're supposed to have got them up out of there. And that's okay. You know who that reminds me of? The Carthaginians. No one necessarily denies the existence of Hannibal. No one necessarily denies that he was supposed to have come over the Alps with all of these elephants and soldiers, and by the time he got to the doors of Rome, he was disintegrated. The Carthaginians have no history that we can find of any depth where they really wrote about themselves in any meaningful manner. If the Romans didn't tell you, yo, this was an issue, we wouldn't really know too much about them. The Romans tell us about Hannibal. So when you go into Northern Africa and you look for, the archaeologists been looking for Carthaginian relics to try to get more explanation and try to give you the story of their civilization, and they can't. Just like they're looking for things about Israel, and what's happening is the same energy isn't given to Israel in fairness the way that they wouldn't deny whatever the Romans said about the Carthaginians. And so I just think that when we look at the narratives, there are things that have been arbitrarily been created by men in their halls of academia as a necessity in order for them confirm. Their lack of being able to confirm everything in history about everyone doesn't negate nor disprove anything. It just means they don't have enough info for them to confidently say, we can corroborate this and corroborate that. So what the Hyksos may have done, and to the degree that they may have ruled, we'll probably never know the depths of it unless some discoveries pop up soon that shed more light on it. And so I just want to say to all the brethren listening, this last thing, I had some brethren dismiss, you know, the 430 years and things like that as not fitting. The Most High said this it was 400 years. Well, when we ask about the 1619 to 2019 revelation that has come about, we in 2022, so this is 403 years. And I asked the brother last week, I said, yo, so if it pops up that Negroes are here until 2049 or 2059, what would y'all say then when people would ask y'all, well, I thought y'all said that this thing was about 400 years. You know what they're going to say? They're going to go back and say, well, 30, 40 years ago in 2019, that was the consign that we have fully been in the land for 400 years. But that didn't mean the Most High was going to bring us out right away. Okay, if that's the case, then how you don't use that same logic and apply it to what happened back then, that they didn't have to come out exactly at the end of 400 years, but that we have a claim that they suffered under oppression and stuff, and they suffered enslaved. Yo, Joseph was enslaved in Egypt. Joseph was a slave, even though he had risen by favor to be a well-treated slave. Okay, he was the best house Negro that Potiphar had. Okay, but he was still enslaved, and when he was blamed of being wicked toward the man's wife without no trial, without fairness, the same thing they say about black men today in the prison system. That Negro was thrown in prison. Then he hoped he could help somebody get him out because he was interpreting dreams, and them cats forgot about him. And it took a few more years for one of them to remember him. And then, even though he rose to position of such importance because of Pharaoh seeing a value in him, when it came time for Joseph to eat, he still ate separate from other Egyptian officials because it was an abomination in their sight to eat with Hebrews, man. So when we talk about Abraham's seed being afflicted and enslaved, it don't all have to happen at one time. But Joseph is Abraham's seed. The children of Israel as a family are Abraham's seed. And we definitely can show that even for them to come into Kemet. It starts with their own oppression of their brother, and they sent their brother into oppression. And then they came into that land, and they were put into labor, where the children of Israel never had to work for anybody before. In order to live in Kemet, they had to become the labor pool for Pharaoh. I think that all of this has to be taken into consideration, because if we compare their situation to ours, I'll end it here. Most of us right now, with your 55-inch TVs in your house because of your vanity, you tired of your kids messing with your TV, so you buy them a big TV for their room too, with your 2 or 3 car leases, with your cryptocurrency investments, with your family vacations and your mortgage payments and your life insurance, and going anywhere you want in the world if you got a passport and can afford it. You own your little timeshares and all of that. Yeah, you sound like you're really suffering right now. You sound really sufferable to me. Sound like you're really suffering, but it sounds like you live more like Daniel and them. So guess what? If anyone could claim right now they believe they're an Israelite in captivity, you're just gonna have to admit that there have been worse times of the captivity, and then times where it seems like it's a little lighter, but because we're still in our enemy's land, we consider ourselves to be under affliction. Let's just be fair to our Father's experience and not make everything our small moment of vapor, because our lives are quick. And because of things we hope to see, everything in the scripture got to somehow fit into our time and narrative in order for it to make sense of us. I believe that's an injustice to the text.
Can I piggyback on that, bro? I agree 1,000%, because that's the other thing too, is we reading texts that are several millennia old, and we're acting as if they don't apply to the people to whom they were originally given, and that they're only for us. And then the selection of the 400 years, one of the problems I have several problems with it, but one of the other problems that has not been answered is that how do you determine that from the time of Christ coming, you have 1,600 years of nothing, and then all of a sudden we just arbitrarily pick 400 years as the latter part, coming after that and decide that's when the prophecy kicks in. It don't apply to nobody that was living or existing closer to the time. It doesn't mean anything for all the Israelites who lived in both the United Kingdom and then the divided kingdom. It doesn't mean anything for all the Israelites who lived under the various empires that conquered them. And then for 1600 years or about after Jerusalem is destroyed, the 400-year prophecy doesn't mean anything. It's just inert. But then on this magical date of 1619, even after there have already been slaves in the Western Hemisphere for over 100 years, 3% of the slaves taken in the transatlantic slave trade all of a sudden rise to significance and prophetic prominence over all the others who are considered their brethren that have also been taken in the slave trade. And the 400 years means only starts then. That's just an eraser of too much time. And then to arbitrarily, again, select this chunk of history, this chunk of 400-year history, and say that this is us. That's problematic.
Yeah, what was that you were bringing up, Anon?
Y'all can see this real quick?
Yeah, we could see it, but we couldn't get to the site for some reason.
It's a PDF. It's I'll find it off Google and give it to you. But this is page 48 and 49. The PDF is Avaris, the capital city of the Hyksos. Recent excavations at Tel El Daba. This is by Manfred B. Tech. He spent the last, he spent 30 years excavating this site. Now, full disclosure, B. Tech doesn't say that these are the Israelites. The reason he doesn't say it is not because there isn't enough evidence, but because he thinks because he sees the word Ramesses that it should be in the 13th century, around 1279. But then he even comes here himself. Matter of fact, let me show you this part if I can find it. He says that per Ramesses is Avaris. This is out of his mouth. It should be in this first paragraph. Here we go. So he says, today, Avaris and Paramesses are identified with Tel El Daba and Quantir respectively. So that's the other site that I mentioned. And then you have these sites as well. But I'll just be real quick. You guys can go look at the rest when you want. And I mean, I have several of these articles. I mean, he's put out so much work. Whatever you want, I'll get you. Especially like Peru Nefer, because Peru Nefer becomes very important. It's a naval base. You find out how Avaris is abandoned, when it is abandoned, and the question becomes why, right? So, but anyway, this is the proof that these Hyksos or these Syro-Palestinians come in and they begin to, overlord over the egalitarian community that was there. So I'll just be real quick. It says the settlement strata, and also gives you a stratigraphy map. I'll show you that at the beginning as well if you want to see it. Has been carefully studied, especially in the more central areas. So it's telling you different parts of the settlement. Now it says, it is surprising that the proportion of Syro-Palestinian pottery rises from 20% to 40% at the expense of the Egyptian ceramic material in the settlement of debris. I just want to show you that we see an influx of Syro-Palestinian. So this is what they say happens. The originally egalitarian settlement pattern becomes socially differentiated. In the program of the houses, different types begin to occur. Here we go. For the wealthier people, the more sophisticated floor plan discussed above, with the vestibule, a living room placed between a bedroom and a side room, and sometimes with storage rooms, became popular. Now remember, this was the egalitarian community at first. It says the dependents of these upper class inhabitants clustered around the houses of their overlords in much humbler buildings, right? And then when you go study all the other works about the Hyksos, it shows not only did they oppress the nomadic people there, but they also started to bring oppression all the way down into Thebes. This is why Amos and Kamos them come up there and get it popping. First is secondary Tau, and he catch the business. I want to say Amos come, he take a rock or something to the face, and then finally Kamos runs him out of there and all the way up to Sharuhin, right? So, but when you look at this, this is clear that they begin to overlord over that egalitarian community. That's all I wanted to point out. You can get this easy. Just type in Avaris. You can just type in this title easy in Google, and it'll pop up for you. Anything with Avaris and Manfred B Tech, you'll get this easy. I yield. Thank you for the time.
Oh, something I just want to point out real quick too. Zadok had made the point about the lack of historical evidence. Something that we also should know, I'm sure a lot of you history-heavy brothers know, is that certain cultures, if a shameful event or incident happened, they had a reputation for striking things out of history to try to erase the event. And the Egyptians were one of the most infamous for doing that. And so that also presents a problem when you have, in ancient times, certain times where a culture would try to eliminate certain things, because even throughout their hieroglyphs, in the Meta Neter, you see how they only try to show the accomplishments of their pharaohs and leaders and always try to present Egypt in this superior light. A lot of the things that we know from other archaeology and things of this sort that would be considered shameful to them, they oftentimes tried to erase or remove that from history, just like folks in the modern day try to whitewash things and certain things of this sort. And so it takes a lot more time, many times, to gather that information or to find it, because it's not always as readily available from the source you think you should be able to go directly to.
Crazy. I agree. I agree so much. I'm sitting here looking up. I'm sitting here searching for these pictures that I got right now of Cinnamut and Hatshepsut being removed off the walls in Kemet, because this is exactly what you see.
That's those two stripper pharaohs you was talking about.
so Hatshepsut was the pharaoh, but Cinnamut, that I really think that's the best figure we see from Moses. And people laugh at me, but then when I ask them where's the body, who was the only person, he had access to all of the slaves. He was the chief person of the time period. He had multiple titles, everything. He was a commoner that grew up in Pharaoh's house, and his father's name is Ramoses. Like, I'm sorry, bro. Like, we just keep going on and on and on. And then he disappears at the time where the Bible says Moses would have disappeared. They don't have his body. You do the math. They wiped him and Hatshepsut off the wall.
Yeah. Hey, you seem like you were surprised with my timeline of the Exodus.
I was surprised when you said that it was 60 years between the death.
Yeah, I had got that mistaken. I don't know. I don't know why I thought it was 65. I had to go back and look. I done got old now, so I can't remember everything, because I just made a mistake the other night with the circumcision thing. But yeah, I thought it said 65, but it didn't. When I did the calculations, it said it's like 200 and how many years I say? 280.
280.
About 280. Yeah, but nah, you still seem like you were surprised with my timeline of 1526 for the birth of Moses. That seemed like a shock.
I was happy that you had it right. I mean, that's the year he was born according to the Bible. That's the only year he could have been born.
Yeah.
Unless we saying Solomon's. Only thing that's going to change the time frame is if Solomon's temple changes.
Right.
That's the only reason. If the timing of Solomon's temple, which I don't see because they've done so much work with the Amorite dynasty and all of this.
Yeah, we do the dates around here, Black Tastic. You tell me, hey man, Hey, when you coming up with these dates, man?
No. I don't have a problem with
no respect to a brother man's timeline. I said you're gonna be anonymous. I said you want that man.
Yeah, no,
Oh, so wait. Time out. I'm sorry. You know what? Because I did do that. There is a whole nother, but no, there is a whole nother timeline that I have skipped over that lines up honestly just as well when you deal with the Hyksos period, and that's what me and Moore have worked on, and that's why we're so we could talk to this thing ad nauseum, because we've had to study so hard to see, like, so for instance, we move from here into the Canaanite conquest. He has his scholars, I have my scholars. So we have to be very sure when we make certain statements, because at this point there is a plethora of evidence to pinpoint when this happened, and then also pinpoint these years of bondage. Like I mean, it's bad how they do us there, bro. I'm not even gonna front. Like, and it's not like it's not chattel slavery though. It's not chattel slavery. I want to make that clear. Like, it's not like we was kidnapped, but we just get treated really bad, bro, and we amalgamate into their culture.
Yeah, but you surprised me with that Hyksos oppressing the Israelites. Now that's what surprised me, because I didn't, you know.
Yeah, and that's what I was actually challenging you on, Yahuchanan, because of the assumption that when you said that the Hyksos didn't beef with the Israelites, and I'm listening at I'm listening at your methodology. In other words, how did you arrive at your conclusion that the oppression didn't start until Moses? And yeah, when you had made the mistake of saying it was 60 years between Joseph and Moses, that kind of threw me off for a minute. But like you said, that was just a mistake. But that's really what I was questioning, was how do you arrive at the conclusion based on the scriptures you're using that the oppression didn't start until Moses? Because I have some other information too, but I was already aware of the fact that Moore and Anonymous had been working on the timeline because I've been lurking. So I've been listening.
Yeah, we've been
certain information, because I'm an undercover nerd, so I like to listen and learn. And so I had listened to some other information and done some research on my own and pulled up some old notes. And what Anonymous brought out is the information I have coincides more closely with what he has. So but I was just questioning, not that I was trying to get an aha moment on you, but I was trying to see.
Oh no, man. I know you're a good brother. These brothers here, we don't agree on everything, but I mean, to bring out information, and this probably edify some people. And like I said, I mean, I have to go back and relook at some stuff. So there's no big deal. I ain't gonna always be right. That's what the brothers are for. So it's all good.
Yeah.
More let Zadok back in. There you go.
Hey, he said, lay back in. Yeah, Zadok there he is. Yeah, so so like I said, I'm just, I'm cracking corny jokes and having fun with my brothers at midnight on the East Coast, me and Anonymous and Zadok out here on the East Coast. I don't know where the rest of you brothers, I know more is out on the West Coast. But this is a great discussion. Like you said, everybody's getting edified, man, because I still have, like I said, when I hear people say the 400 years, there's some things that I won't mention right now, but maybe later, that I've also noticed that seem to come along with that. But there are a lot of questions that people just tend to gloss over. And so, for instance, when I asked earlier, well, then do we just throw out all the 100 and the slaves that came here in somewhere between 1501 to 1502 to Santo Domingo, and that would have preceded those that came in 1619 by some 117, 118 years? And do we just ignore all of that? And like Zadok brought up earlier, you had Francis de Avila, down there in St. Augustine. You had slaves there, in the 1500s. I discovered myself that I had family here in the 1500s before slavery. And so you do have other historical documentation and information that has, and things of this sort. So so it seems like I said, we in America seem to have a tendency to more or less, and maybe I'm not trying to offend anybody, but the 400-year prophecy is Americanized. entire narrative is built around American blacks, or
19.
African Americans.
Right.
And so that means that it's basically saying that only the African Americans, the 3% of the slaves, or the descendants of that 3%, brought through the United States, the British colonies, are the true Israelites, which excludes automatically everyone else who was here before us. And like I said, they were even enslaved, like in Cuba and in Brazil, longer than us. So
In,
that,
in the interest, in the interest of unity, can I say something real quick, OG?
yeah.
Can I say something real quick? Hey, look. Now I said I wasn't gonna do that. I'm gonna go ahead and tell y'all right now. There's a way for you to make the 400-year prophecy thing work for you, if that's what you need. Whatever it takes to get people moving and get active, and say maybe it's time to unify and maybe get up out of here. I'm for it. So, all right. So if you just focus on the 1619, you got your brothers, our brothers and sisters in Demona are a perfect time frame for you, and you could just say you believe it's a double prophecy, right? This would be the most honest way to deal with the text at this point. Say you think it's a double prophecy. I don't subscribe to that, but many people do, and so I can't be mad at you because I can't sit here and tell you it's not. If you look at Demona, they got over to Libya in 1967. Then they got into the land in 1969, and then they just had their Jubilee year in 2019 for 50 years. And
So
so
here
that would have
comes the
marked,
obvious question, Anonymous. So why don't they already do that?
I don't know, bro. I have no
Oh,
idea.
so now this is me. This is me being more right quick because it takes away from the oppression pimping narrative, right? Like so, half of it. This is me, right? Hold on, let me do this right quick.
Yeah, I'm
Let me
let
do
him handle that.
let me do this right quick. This ain't got nothing to do with no one on the panel. This is just more, right? Like so. You heard me say it a million times. This whole 400-year prophecy thing is a dog whistle for the Negro only concept, right? But half of that concept is like people are just pushing this whole like you've been oppressed, you're being oppressed, and you being oppressed is the sign of you being an Israelite or whatnot. So if I recognize what Anonymous is talking about and say this is a double prophecy that's already been fulfilled or whatnot, and people are in the land and the Mon Israel, all the type of stuff, well then I can't stick to the oppression concept, and I got nothing to push, I got nothing to pimp. I got nothing to get your money with. That's me saying it. That's more saying it. Ain't no one else said
hey, 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 I'm gonna keep it a stack, bro. I want peace and unity, man. I just want us to come together, bro. Like to me, it's not that serious. We clearly see the 400 years in past. If we look in archaeology, I'm not mad at anybody if they looking for the 400-year prophecy, but I would like us to be honest about the text. Like I said, use Demona. I don't know, but I,
I'm gonna get
hey,
mad real quick because like in a couple of years it's gonna turn into a 430-year prophecy, right?
I know.
It's gonna
Yeah,
go
you
from a
know the way
400
is.
to a 407 to 430. You
But
know what
they're
I'm saying?
already putting out videos saying that the 400 years ends in 2024 now. They didn't move the goalposts. It's already moved.
What? Why 2024?
I have no idea. I've just seen a flood of videos in my
Hey, bro,
queue.
y'all starting to make me feel like I'm missing
I
out
have
on
no
my
idea, man.
my prophecy anointing. Like, what am I missing? What do you mean?
But that's when you start scrambling, this is what happens, man. Dates and things start changing, and then people even change the way that they even interpret the text to make it line up with their new view. They're
Right,
saying, well, the 400 years ended, and then there was judgment, and then but the judgment period is unspecified. So
right.
we could be here for 700 years, and they would say, see, well, it ended 300 years ago, and the judgment been for 300 years, but why we didn't get free? So it's all of these things. Like I said, if you have to keep, this is just my opinion, if you have to keep moving and adjusting
There's a
your
problem.
theology or prophecy, that
Right.
means it's not true.
Sheesh. Sheesh.
Let me say, as the one who goes by the moniker "He Who Smoketh." Orthodox Moor, don't you ever feel you got to take me off stage when you start trouble, son.
Oh, my G
You know
said,
what I'm
puff,
saying?
puff, give. I got you. Let's go.
Because at the end of the day, I agree with your sentiment, you see. But it doesn't mean that I don't take my brothers seriously. Brothers who I love, I'm talking about guys who I know face to face, not some of us who have become acquainted through the internet. I got brothers who I love to life who hold that view. And so they'll tell you, they be like, yo, we hear his explanation and why he doesn't see it that way. When I did used to at one time, see, I used to hold that view. But if we're talking about Abraham's descendants, his seed being strangers in the land that's not theirs, for anyone to use 1619 to even start the beginning of the presence of the so-called Israelite on the North American continent, it's a lie. History just shuts it down. How could you shoot down the Afro-Brazilians who are the biggest quote unquote group of blacks outside the country of Nigeria? There are,
Bartholomew de la Casas.
bro, there are more brethren in Brazil than there are us in the United States, and they've been there longer. And then one brother, he had an idea that was interesting to me, that for some reason he reads the nation in Genesis to have to be a world empire. Even though I don't agree, I would say, well, okay,
What
well,
nation? What you mean?
bro, look. All I can tell you is this: if the English colonies represented a world empire, then the Spanish were an equivalent world empire. The French were an equivalent world empire. At one time, you could say the Portuguese. And so when you look at how the United States was set up, even though New Amsterdam, which became renamed New York once the English got rule over it, it was established by the Dutch for beaver fur trade. And they the ones who tricked the Native Americans out of the island of Manhattan. So all I can say is that if it's about Abraham, if the 400-year prophecy is about Abraham's children being strangers in the land that's not theirs and being enslaved and oppressed over that time, then 1619 historically it just can't start to count. And by that alone, that shuts down the idea of the 400-year prophecy for those who see the sense in it. But for those who have to hold on to a narrative of somehow they connect all of that to things in Daniel and Revelation, then it don't really matter what we would say. They will hold on to their convictions. And I wouldn't argue them into a corner about it, but prayerfully they can understand why one like myself couldn't agree with them.
I'm just gonna summarize what my brother said. When you say this, you completely disrespecting our brothers and sisters that went through all types of atrocities 100 years before our ancestors got here. And that's just the real, right? These people purposefully said, okay, we about to kill off the Tainos. Let's go get the Africans. Right? That's before they even get to us. So we got to keep that a buck. Go ahead, more. My bad.
You get money. Yeah, I want to be clear on something too. Like, so to the people that I do wag the finger at with the skin doctrine and whatnot, I do want to point this out. Like, I feel like there's truth and falsehood strangely mixed in this whole 400-year concept, right? Because I feel like a lot of people are drawn towards it for an epigenetic reason, right? And I personally feel that there is a significance to the population in the West of people waking up to being Israel and whatnot, in the sense to when the gathering does happen, there's this concept of like the Zechariah 12 and 10 and whatnot, like the like the come to Jesus moment that we had that Israel has as a nation and whatnot, etc. Right. And again the concept of gathering of the gospels, like in Romans 11 and whatnot, right? I feel like in the West, again, we're people that came through a slave trade and an inquisition, those who connected to Israelite populations and whatnot, right? And when you do the genetic studies on that population, that's roughly over 300 plus million people just in the Americas alone, right? And the vast majority of them believe in Jesus, and they're not trying to put Jesus down in no way, shape, or form. So I do believe the scriptures does point to a concept of this population having a significant effect in terms of turning the so-called quote unquote Jewish world, the Israelite world, to Jesus. However, I don't think that's based upon a skin doctrine, but I do think that's of supreme importance. And I think that the people that do cling to a skin doctrine should start looking at the concept of why we were chosen and what happens with the light of our rising and whatnot. The concept of being a light to the nations, but then also drawing the nations to the light of your rising. A lot of people are stuck on this oppression, affliction, and then retribution concept, right? If you're an Israelite based upon the fact that you want to see retribution amongst the nations or whatnot versus righteousness rise amongst the nations, like you gotta look in the mirror and ask yourself a couple of questions, like some real serious questions. Because when I read the scroll, that's not our purpose. Our purpose is to draw the nations to the light of our rising, to the light of the Most High and the Mashiach, etc. But with that, I yield the floor and shout out to Elder Yara jumping on the panel. What's good with you, brother, man? Shalom, Mark.
Hey, shalom, Mark. Finally made it up. Finally made it to the party. Shabbat shalom, family.
Shalom to the elder, aka the Sinetta Slapper, aka Stay Punching. I'm saying I had to put that out there real quick.
Shabbat shalom, Elder Yara.
Yeah, Shabbat shalom, Mr. Blacktastic, and Morey Zadok and Morey Yahuchanan for y'all teachers on this panel, man. So it's a blessing to be in the midst. How good it is for brothers to dwell together in unity, man. And that's what I've been hearing this evening. It's been a beautiful thing and a beautiful lesson. And to the people in the chat, man, that are listening, Shabbat shalom. I just wanted to pose this question. What's really the significance of the 400-year prophecy today? Right? And even adhering to it or being mindful of it. If in fact it is something we should be holding to the cuff, what would really be the significance of it? I know we always kick this question around a lot in our conversation. Is it really a salvific issue? Right?
Definitely not. But it can lead to some bad doctrine being taught and giving false hope.
Exactly.
Giving false hope to the brethren. That's what I see in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree. Okay.
Yeah, ditto.
Yeah, and so even with dealing with these types of issues, I had a discussion earlier this evening with an elder, and he basically posed a question like, what is some of the topics that we're discussing, things like historical Moses or evidence for Moses, and identifying these things and dealing with certain different topics, like really what is the benefit, how does it play into the Yah's plan of salvation, right? And he was really concerned about that, and in dealing with for the lack of a better term, Israelite apologetics, right? For the lack of a better term, like really what's the significance of it, and is it, does it really lead people to the Most High? And so in my discussion, I posed the question. I said, "The Scripture teaches us that he that winneth souls is wise," and we live in an information age, right? And a lot of the young people that are born today were born in, of course, in the information age. This is the age we live in, and there's a lot of arguments and things that are posed today that a lot of us didn't have to deal with coming up as youth, right? There wasn't necessarily an argument for science against the scriptures to a degree where we see its use today to try to, to dismiss, what we read in scripture and what thus saith Yah. And so I think the the arguments have become more sophisticated in one respect, but yet in another respect, they're used as wiles to sort of snatch people away and turn people away from the truth in the Most High. So in that respect, these types of discussions and things are very important. People are more intellectualized. People respond to certain things. They have more questions now and about certain things because of the age that we live in. And so I think these types of discussions are very important. And, some agree, and some disagree. But I think it's very important that these types of conversations are had because as Morazedek just said, the deception is here, right? The spirit of the Antichrist has always been here, and that's simply a spirit of deception, right? And so we need to continue to have these things, continue to dig, continue to look at, definitely study the scriptures and and be apt to teach and dig into, extra biblical sources and things that support what the scripture has already given us. A lot of people don't really, they don't really see it, right, and see the importance of it, but it's a work that's to be done. I told Brother Sean Harris a couple of weeks ago, I think the Yap Gang, Orthodox more and the work that they do, it's significant work, right? It's significant work. It's new. It's something that's new to the ministry. It's a new tool for evangelism. It's important. It's important. It's one of the great. I think it's one of the greater works to be had at this time. And people, they're slow to catch on or see the significance of it. But these things are important. I enjoy the Dogon. Brother Zadok does. Like those conversations are important. And Brother Anonymous and Yahuchanan, y'all already know what it is, and more. It's like these things are important. They're important tools to be used, in ministry and in witnessing. It's not just about street preaching. It's not just about bombarding churches and different things like that. Those things can have a profound effect, but you can reach people, overseas when you're doing this. And I just want to encourage people that these things are ministries. I know we are on we're on these platforms often, right? Teaching and sharing with us, y'all, and having these discussions, but be encouraged because these things are important, man. And people reach out to me from everywhere. And they're encouraged by a lot of things, but they're discouraged by a lot of things. But there are always new people that are coming and listening. And so these things are important, that there's a presence to be had in these spaces. So, I just want to say to the brothers on here, I appreciate y'all being encouraged. As don't come down off the wall, brick in one head and sword in the other. So these things are important, man. And again, I just appreciate the spirit and the knowledge of you brothers, man. So that's all I wanted to say.
Amen, my brother.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Amen. Hey, I want to, Elder said something that I thought was really profound when he was asking about
Hallelujah.
what does this have to do concerning salvation? It's not a salvific issue, in terms of doctrine. One thing that does bother me that I see, though, that often arises, and I'm sure you all have seen it as well, is it becomes, and I had made a statement a while ago, it becomes a point of division, quite divisive by those who hold to that position. And that is, you go on Facebook right now, or anywhere we tend to gather and exchange, you'll see several posts or comments saying anyone that doesn't believe in the 400 years is crazy, or you blind, or you stupid. or you deaf, or you don't have no discernment, or you don't have any understanding. And that's the one thing that bothers me, is because even though it's not doctrinally have anything they won't, believing in the 400 years or not believing in it won't save you. If you continue to take that type of stance concerning the 400 years, from a behavior perspective, you can lose your salvation because you got the wrong spirit. You got the wrong heart now. And what you're starting to do now is base someone else's standing or righteousness with the Most High on whether or not they believe like you do. And I tend to see that more from our brethren who hold to the 400-year doctrine. And it's changed my perspective on several other doctrines as well, because I'm starting to see a common behavior associated with those who hold to a specific position. And it becomes this point of almost, it's almost like we have a subgroup of people created in the Israelite nation. We're the 400-year Israelites, y'all them other Israelites. And so that kind of thing, where if you believe something, you don't have to attack other people who don't agree with you. But it's like they're so sure of themselves, and that's where pride.
You cannot brush by that statement you just said. You have to say that again.
In the words of the great prophet Pinky, say it again. Say it again.
I don't know, forgot exactly what I just said, but
you was making a point that just because we disagree on a point doesn't mean we hate each other. Doesn't mean it's automatic. Go to the mattress. It's like we acting like we mobsters, bro. Like
right. So so my feeling is, for those who, because we can all, for a moment, when you feel like you've been attacked, get in the flesh and respond back in like manner. And I could call all of those who disagree with me because I don't believe in the 400-year prophecy, delusional, and all the things that they call us, or that I've seen said. Because we have people that have done, series and documentaries and written books and things to promote this particular perspective. And they've gathered, oftentimes a large following and perspective. Now, not everybody who's done that is as demonstrative, as others have been. But because normally, but you do see a lot of this happen, and I think that's divisive, and that does not represent the spirit of the Most High. As Elder came on and he quoted the scripture, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. And if we're using our personal perspectives or beliefs, and then we're making them absolutes, meaning now that without question, my particular belief or perspective on the scripture is infallible. That's almost blasphemous. As if you cannot be wrong, and only the Most High is the one that's not wrong. But when you take that perspective and then you begin to use that to chide others and to tell them they're lesser than, or they're not of substance, or they're stupid, or they're blind and they're deaf, that is opposite of the behavior that we're supposed to exhibit. As Moore was saying, being a light to the world, that's darkness. And that particular behavior will cause you to be lost individually, because you're no longer walking in the light, but you're walking in darkness, and you've allowed your own pride to now overtake you. And the other thing is, for me personally, the 400 years takes all the emphasis off of being prepared for the coming of the Messiah, so that we will bow to him. Because all I hear for the most part is people talking about what they gonna do. We gonna leave. We gonna get out of here. We gonna see our enemies destroyed. It's we gonna rule. They gonna bow to us. Nobody thinking about there's a king on the throne that's not you. He got to come back and deliver us from everything because we can't deliver ourselves. They didn't completely forgot about him. This is his inauguration, our elevation, but he's the one with all the crowns. And the people that he's coming for have completely forgotten about him and put all the focus on themselves. And they more or less are using him basically as the background singer in his own group. And that's one of the problems that I do see when people fall too deep into this attitude of we, me, and we're right and everybody else is wrong. And there's no possibly way we can be wrong. And they start doing all this scrambling. I yield.
You know what? I may catch a little flack from some brothers who I definitely got care for. And I'll be honest, in my own experience, even though I've had some very passionate discussions with some brethren who hold to the 400-year narrative in the North American context, it's been civil and respectable. And I believe that we have, admiration for one another in other areas where we vehemently agree, actually. But I'm going to say this, in my estimation, the 400-year prophecy is the 12 tribes chart of prophecy.
Man, see, that's what I'm saying, bro. That's why, look, bro, man, see, that's what I'm
And just as for the ISUPK, the original ISUPK, with Ariya and them brothers and them coming up with this 12 tribes concept and that chart concept as a recruiting tool. This 400-year narrative, it's not enough to use the Deuteronomy 28 narrative as far as going back into Egypt on ships and all of this and the way, however they explain that. But the 400 years has to apply to the American Negro who's walking down the block. And it's a recruiting tool for the so-called awakening. But it's totally Americanized. Even when you hear some of our brethren who I believe are more astute than me in diving into some historical narratives, which I have respect for, which is why I go to their platforms. When I want to hear great discussions, breaking down DNA, and Y chromosomes and mitochondrial this and migration patterns, and man, I ain't got time for all that, y'all. I'm teaching the gospel. So let me listen to those who actually give time to that. Because when you hear them online, they're so dedicated to that unlike me, you hardly ever hear them preaching the gospel. They've become specialists in the research of DNA and things like that. They're not out here, not at least not on these platforms that we stroll through. They're not preaching the gospel. So we all have our place, but all of these things together, I believe if it's done in purity, it can lead to the edifying of the people overall. So I can learn from others who have been given another vocation. And then you have those who have gone into extensive, as best they could, historical research to just try and show the various captivity and exile narratives of the Hebrews, all going all the way back to the Assyrian Empire. Y'all know that in some of these same people history who hold to this 400-year prophecy, and some of their other teachings, I've heard some of them exclusively show, in order to prove who we come from, they show us being connected to people who on the continent have not had to necessarily be quote unquote awakened to who they claim to be. They'll point to the oral traditions that go back 1,000 years or more. So the awakening is not a worldwide, Israelites don't know who they are and got to be told who they are. This is a very American thing. And I find it to be just like damn meters and centimeters and kilometers and liters. America, the only country on earth, the only one that use inches and feet and gallons and pints. Everywhere else on the planet, from Europe to Asia and Africa, uses the metric system. And just as for some reason the American system has to be different, just because, I believe that's what that 12 tribes chart is, and I believe that's what this 400-year prophecy narrative is. And I'm not saying that brethren are being disingenuous with their belief. I meet brothers who will argue you into the damn grave about that 12 tribes chart because they really believe it, y'all. It's not like they're faking. And it's brethren who sincerely believe in what they see when it comes to the 400 years. So I don't want to doubt their sincerity, but I just believe that they're sincerely wrong. And I'm just willing to stand on that. And prayerfully, that issue wouldn't become something between us. But if I believe that it could eventually put it like this, if they believe that having discussions with individuals like ourselves would be because they have to let the people see the error that we have in interpretation, then that's just, the measure that you meet a matter shall be met back to you. And the reason why this is such a key and pivotal scenario, and I'll end here, is because I find many brethren who unfortunately have become so enamored with trying to, I guess, find out who they physically are, that they don't put as much time into who they are spiritually being told to be through the gospel. And they don't find themselves being able to be a light to the nations. Some of them, I'm not trying to generalize them all, but a great majority I've dealt with. And to be fair, my experience is limited to my own life and the severely limited amount of people I have interaction with. But many that I have had with, and I just want y'all to know, I got my name Zadok Ben Israel back in 1996. So I've been around for a while. I'm an OG. I find many brethren have this common narrative where when you hear what they concentrate on, with looking for, I guess, a redemption, because now they believe that they're Israel, there comes a lack of teaching the nations what they ought to be doing. And when you do hear in reference to the nations what they ought to be doing, most of them, it's somehow connecting themselves to Black people who believe in Christ, who say they're Israelites, who you really need to come unto in order to learn the truth of the word. And some of these Negroes just found out they was Hebrews or have come to belief of that within the last decade. And you really think that the world been waiting all this time to really find out the truth because you've awakened. Damn, the arrogance, man.
I'll just say this. I'm laughing and joking, but my concern is that this narrative is being used to determine your moves, either for or against unification, whatever it looks like. Um, at some point in time, regardless of 400 years up or not, we got to unify as a community, right? We know that we have to unify these two sticks. We know that we have to bethink ourselves in our captivity. And I'm not talking about chattel slavery. I'm talking about from the perspective of we're not in the land, we can't worship the way we want, these things like that. Um, Anything else to me, now if we need to get into, I don't know that we should, I don't think that we really have this issue, but if we really are still arguing, at least among Israelites, about our connection to Yeshua, our connection to the law. Now I know there are nuances in terms of his position, deification, things like that, and we got to work those out. But for the most part, we're pretty unified on that. If things like the 400-year prophecy or uh, Negro only doctrine or whatever, if these things really become a hindrance, I'm gonna say that the person that's causing a problem, now you got to check yourself. Like, what's your subconscious motive? Because I'm worried. I'm watching people who I thought were ready, and it's becoming apparent that not everybody is ready for the next step, right? Which is, we keep saying this, people being drawn to the light of our rising, but what does that look like? Yeah, that look like going out into these streets and helping these homeless people, planting community gardens, teaching people how to properly take care of their family, do the things, especially when we talk about the orphan and the widow, right? And the stranger, whatever your ideology is, y'all do realize like our goal is to build a real physical kingdom, right? And however the timeline works on everyone's eschatology, what that looks like, we can have that discussion as well. But more importantly, the most important thing that we should be working on or focusing on is the unification. And so once again, the 400-year prophecy, while I vehemently disagree with the perspective, to me it's not salvific. Like I said, I'll give you a way to do whatever it is you know, however you got to work it out. Each man got to work out his own conscience. Don't be lying, right? But if you are a double prophecy fulfiller or whatever, what do they call it? Dual fulfillment. If you feel like some of these prophecies have dual fulfillments, um, like some of us believe Deuteronomy 28 is a cyclical conversation. We could have that, but if you feel there's a dual fulfillment, just say that and work that out. But if not, come out of whatever you holding on to and start unifying with your brothers and your sisters. That's what I want to see happen, right? Uh, we shouldn't be we shouldn't be in the space where now we're separating even more, right? We need to be moving closer together. We need to start talking about what does it look like to really live amongst each other. And shout out to shout out to Zadok. I saw an old video of him today planting a tree or something. He's talking about these different lemon trees and stuff that they had. I came through it, clicking through the websites up there. Zadok been at this for a minute, bro. I'm gonna be honest with y'all, man.
Wow.
Yeah, I had jokes, but I ain't gonna do it on the live. I was like, look at this. Hey, I was proud of you. I'm proud. Like this dude got what was this like this is like 2010, something like this. They out there planting gardens. So, like you said, even at it for a minute. And so, watching all of y'all encourage me, it makes me want to go further, keep going. I'm hoping that we move out of this space where we're contentious just to be contentious, right? Say your piece, say what you believe, and then let's move on. It don't make you a heretic, don't make you, crazy or nothing. It's just if you're trying to use this to justify taking your toys and closing your doors, waiting for the return of Yeshua, that's different from those that feel like we need to see the return in order to make certain moves, but they still working. Like whatever it is, we all need to be working. If you're not working, start working. If you are working, keep working. If you got bigger goals, then get those to the next level and let's unify. That's all I want to hear. And get into a deeper knowledge, a deeper understanding of your relationship with the Mashiach. Because there is a deeper understanding of this. And that really should be our focus. Coming together as a people and getting closer to our deity and getting closer to the King. I'm gonna shut up now.
See, this is my focus on the whole thing, right? Is there's some Christian apologists who actually make a really good argument in the sense to where like they hear a lot about Israelite nationality, Israelite identity, but they don't hear a lot about the gospel and whatnot, right? And that's one of the fights like I would really like to have on a scholastic front with a lot of people and just start talking about stuff in the public. Like, what gospel are you talking about? Because when we talk about like the Messiah and whatnot, he talked about this concept of the gospel of the kingdom. And that's an important concept and whatnot. Like, so when we're looking at Christians, when we're looking at the camps, when we're looking at the vast majority of the so-called moderates and whatnot, they have a very similar doctrine in this. The Christians say, believe in Jesus and sit on your hands. The camps say, believe in Jesus and sit on your hands and wait for America to fall, right? The moderates say, believe in Jesus and sit on your hands and wait for him to show up to take you back to Africa or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, this whole concept of sitting on your hands is a very un-Israelite concept in the text, man. This whole bit about like your oppression is ending or your captivity is ending in 1619, but you're still or in 2019, but you're still oppressed in 2022. Like, it's got people sitting on their hands and whatnot, right? They're not picking up this scroll and cleansing themselves and rebuilding themselves and um, um, doing the work of renewing themselves with via the mind or whatnot, right? And this is a I get confused because if you're raising your hand and saying you're an Israelite, what's the point? What are you doing it for, right? Because either you're recognizing that you are volunteering for the hardest job in the world, i.e., being a representative of the Most High in His way, in His kingdom, in His structure on earth for other people to emulate, or you're trying to play an elaborate game of dress up to where you're the most special kid on the block, and for the mere fact that you were oppressed in ways that a bunch of other people were oppressed in history, that the Most High is going to pick you up and somehow make you more special than everyone else. Like if you're feeling the need to be special, that's emblematic of some kind of trauma that needs to get dealt with, right? And we have a lot of sincere trauma we can look at that needs to get dealt with. And that's the importance of these scrolls and learning how to build this kingdom, because we have the cheat codes on how to deal with this trauma as a people. We have the cheat codes on this. The Most High gave us the cheat codes on this. Using these cheat codes on ourselves and showing other people how to use these cheat codes is our job.
Black
That's
people don't talk to counselors. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, that part.
Yeah, but but at the same point in time, okay, here's part the whole thing. Like, so if I'm gonna be part of the whole 40-year prophecy, like, so I'm gonna talk about the affliction and the oppression and all the trauma, right? So what do we do with that besides just remind people that, hey, your captivity is coming to an end, but don't forget you're oppressed? What are we doing psychologically to the people with that?
And that's why I brought up the whole concept. Like psychologically, we got so much more work to do. We need to be in that space before, some of us we really could cohabitate with each other. But there's a whole nother group that's just coming into this. And that's the other hardest part. There's a whole group of, 21, 22, 25s coming into this because all praise to the Most High, we are doing our job, right? Let's be honest about that. Like, okay, Most High is using us, but now let's have a unified or at least a semi-unified message to give these youngsters, because I'm seeing them, bro. Like, and I'm watching them. They wanna be in the fight. They wanna be in the fight with us, but they searching. Like they still in the space of what's the truth, which way is up. Wasn't that a movie back in the day? Like they trying to figure out true north.
Right. And if we're too busy fighting over secondary issues versus getting on these cheat codes from the scrolls and whatnot, fam, we're just like the Sadducees and Pharisees who are standing at the gates of heaven, not letting no one in and not going in ourselves.
And as a matter of fact, let me humble myself real quick, because I think I've been in this the least, amount of time out of everybody on the panel. And I'm still approaching close to a decade, but I remember when I came into this, like there was not like a unified thing. Like I had to sift through it. I listened through hours of debates and studying and reading. These are the things I want to see people like us start to put together, right? So when we do see the 400-year debate, at least we know this person took some type of course and they at least know both sides. And so now you don't have to be dogmatic about something that there's two different sides of it. Our goal is to figure out everything. How can we build? How can we unify this belief system in terms of this space? But it's nothing to go crazy about. It's nothing to go berserk about. And I think people like us have to put those, whatever it looks like, a lesson, a class together. Y'all the mores, because and we all do, and that's what I'm working on. I'm, full disclosure, but we do have to get these people a direction. So 15 years from now, this argument ain't happening. At least it's not happening like this.
Right. I'd say something else too, man. Is one of the things that Moore said about doing the work, and this is, I guess, another one of my issues is anything that makes you stagnant is not of the Most High. It's not, because the commission is static. You got to be on the move. We're supposed to be winning the world, and we're supposed to be going to the world. You know who is going to the world? A lot of our brethren from the African continent. They're going to Europe. You know, Europeans used to go to Africa, but these brothers are going to Europe because Europe is almost basically a godless continent at this point. It's predominantly atheist now. And you got people going out from Africa and from other parts of the world, whereas the United States used to be heavy into that. But they're going out and preaching the gospel, establishing congregations and things of this sort. And so when I contact and talk with some of them, depending on what time it is over there, and I'm listening and hearing different things that they're doing, it inspires me, but it also convicts me about what more can I do here. And I see so many people trying to unplug from the system, and in the process, you're also unplugging from the community. Because, like I said, instead of fulfilling the commission, people are waiting to leave to watch the world burn. And if we believe in all the things that the scripture says about the end coming, what we should be doing is having a sense of urgency to warn others and give them the gospel message so that they can escape, through salvation and be a part of the promises that have been made, to the people of the Most High. And so I think that's like I said, that's one of the other focuses when we start getting into these things. And I categorize, like I said, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but I do tend to categorize a lot of these beliefs or positions under the subject of what I call revenge theology, because that's always central to a lot of this teaching, And so if we're so worried about what's going to happen to our enemies and what's going to happen to the nations we feel have done us wrong and the nations that we've oppressed, that means we're not spending time focusing on trying to be an ambassador to the nations, because the Mashiach died for them too. And he raised us up to be a light for them. And we can't continue to fail in that endeavor. He says, go ye into all the world. All the world. All right. And people like to hang their hat on, well, he only came to the house of Israel. Well, that's what he did. That's not what he told you to do. Okay. He went to the house of Israel to raise Israel up to do what he told them to do, which was now go to everybody else. He tells the apostles, you're going to be witnesses unto me in Acts chapter 1, verse 8. First in Jerusalem, then in Judea, then in Samaria, and to the uttermost parts of the world. We didn't left Jerusalem. We've been out of Judea. We already went to Samaria. This is the uttermost parts of the world age that we're in. And all people are talking about is watching the uttermost parts of the world that we literally been scattered to, watching it burn as we leave and return. And they missed the message, whereas in the scriptures, everybody wants an escape. But is that what the will of the Mashiach was when he was praying for the apostles and for the rest of us that were yet to come? When he was making his prayer in John chapter 17, verse number 15? No. He says, I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one. But we want escapism. We want a quick exit. And he says, no, I need you right here, because this is where the work is at. Do the work first and you'll get the reward. Don't beg for the dessert until you have the dinner. Don't ask for the reward if you ain't got the work done. And we want to just pass the work up and go straight to reward because we tired. And so this is, like I said, these types of things is something that I think we're going to have to reassess. What are we doing with the time that we have right now? If you look at the scripture where it says, a day in the eyes of the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. Let me use that philosophically for one moment. 1,000 years as one day. What he's saying is each day is so precious that you got enough time as if you had 1,000 years. So when you waste a whole day not fulfilling the will of the Most High for your life and walking in your position, in your calling, it's as if you wasted 1,000 years. So every day has to be prioritized in terms of what's my next move, because no man is promised tomorrow. Some of us that's listening tonight might not make it till Sunday or tomorrow. Yah forbid. I pray that we all do. But that's just as my brother Zadok said earlier, our life is as a vapor. You can't catch your next breath in a fast car unless the Most High give it to you. And so we can't be so nonchalant about this mission and the seriousness of saving souls. As Elder said earlier, he who winneth souls is wise. So the question becomes for us, are we proving ourselves to be wise people unto the one who has called us, or are we behaving as fools? And we have to do a careful self-examination and be honest about that. And then it's just as simple as repenting and restarting.
I don't know about you, brothers, but it is getting late for me. I know it's got to be getting late for y'all. Y'all want to give a closing statement, or y'all want to keep building? What's going on?
Yeah, I gotta get ready. I gotta get up soon. But no, I appreciate everybody that came on the panel. I appreciate the information you brought out, Anonymous. Like I said, I would do my due diligence and do some more research. Appreciate Zadok coming on there, and appreciate you too, Blacktastic. Glad you did the show tonight, more, and glad that you had me on. Everybody have a good night. I hope we gave some edifying. Well, I know they did, but I hope I brought some edifying information as well. With that, I say shalom, Shabbat shalom to everybody.
Yes,
Shabbat
sir.
shalom to you, man.
Shabbat shalom, fam. You want to give any closing statements, Brother Blacktastic?
Oh man, just Shabbat Shalom, man. I gave my last bit just a minute ago.
I know that's right. How about yourself, Anon?
You know what it is, man. Shabbat shalom. Shout out to the brother Moore, man. Had a great show. Peace and love to all of Israel, man. Just start to keep the law, right? And keep the commandments. I mean, that's one of the things we got to do. More importantly, work on your relationship with the Messiah, and it'll start to lead you into truth, right? Start to study His word. Start to study His actions. It'll lead you into truth and understanding of what we need to do. And other than that, man, it's just love. Uh, it's just love. Shalom.
Yes, sir. And with that, I'm going to say this. Much gratitude to everybody that jumped on the panel. Yahuchanan, Blacktastic, Anon, Zadok, Elder Yara, everybody in the chat. Brother Fidel, who jumped on early as well. Shout out to everybody who rocks with the 400-year prophecy and those who don't. Hopefully, very soon we'll be going through these secondary issues that aren't salvific, like the good brother Blacktastic mentioned, and really getting things in order. But one thing I would really like to say is the world is watching. The world is definitely watching. So I was just talking to people in the Netherlands who were identifying as Israelites, watching these conversations in America and whatnot. And so we owe the people watching, we owe the text, and we owe the God that we serve a conversation that is above being emotional and filled with ad hominems and whatnot, right? This goes for me and everyone involved and whatnot. We could all get better at it, right? But this one here, this concept of attaching to an identity to the point of it becoming almost idolatry, if not idolatry. That's something that's really got to get hashed out. Because there's no issue with identifying as Israel. But if your identification stops there, or if you just stop at identifying and now you're just sitting on your hands and you're waiting for destruction and elevation, etc., whatnot, there's a fairy tale aspect in that as grown adults, we owe something better to the generation coming behind us. We owe something better to the people watching us. We owe something better to the God we say we all serve. Because this concept of being a light to the nations is not just you saying that you're Israel. That does nothing for the world. We're all saying we're Israel. What's that doing for the world? In and of itself, it means nothing unless it's unified for a purpose, like my man Anon keeps talking about. And there's a purpose in these scrolls that when we dig into them, like, so again, you can attach the identity concept, right? But like, once you find out you're Israel, do you really need to spend like 10, 15, 20 hours a month studying the history of trying to figure out every migration pattern to know who's what, where, or because we all do that. We've all done it. People on this panel have all done that part. Like we've done that ad nauseum. But you know what we also do? Ad nauseum, we we argue over these scrolls. We go over these scrolls together. We hit each other up and talk about these scrolls and whatnot. Because we recognize, like, us talking about our identity leads us back to that thing. Like, to the last man on this panel I've talked to, like the concept of self-identifying with the people of the book made the culture a bit more real. Did it make them like it wasn't this concept like, oh, I'm above everybody. No, it was like, wow, this story is super real to me now. I can feel it, I can taste it, I can touch it. Like, that's important. That's a great starting point. But if we take this left turn of, okay, now we're superior. Like, I love my brother Yahuchanan, right? Like, this is the first time I ever heard him talk about this concept of, like, potentially our affliction in the Americas was more so than the people in other, like, the Caribbean or South America, etc., whatnot, right? I haven't done the most extensive study on the slave trade. I know people who've done more. I've done quite a bit of study on it. And that when we're making statements like that, and again, this isn't a shot at Yahuchanan or nobody, right? This is like really echoing what my man Blacktastic said, is we're having a really Americanized view of the thing. And again, that in and of itself points to a psychosis, right? That in and of itself is pointing to some form of trauma, to where we're trying to fix that by over focusing on this thing here. I'm going to give the advice of just recognize there is something to be in the chosen, to be in the chosen people in the script, right? There is something to that, 100%. But what is that? And are you willing to live up to that standard? Because there is a standard. You don't get to be that people without a standard. That standard is more important than we are. Again, the Most High said he could throw us all away and start over with stones, because it's that standard that's important, not us. The only thing important about us is that we keep that standard. But right now, we're not even unified on what that standard is. That's where our shift and our focus has to be, because it's the same basic question. Okay, I know I'm Israel. Now what? I say I'm Israel. Then what? And that's the question I'm gonna leave with everyone. Like, once you say you're Israel, then what? But with that, family, I appreciate y'all. Appreciate y'all for coming through. Appreciate you sharing your thoughts in the chat. Um, Again, appreciate all the great words of wisdom that came out from everybody. So the sincere thoughts, the sincere going back and forth. Um, Everyone knows what, like, me and my people know what it is. Like, we have a lot of back and forth slapboxing conversations and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? This is just one of the few times we put it on air. You know what I'm saying? And we go way harder than this offline. Know that.
Spiritual black eyes.
Yo. Yo.
Spiritual lumps, bro.
Yo, for real. Be looking like spiritual Rocky in you know what I'm saying, Apollo Creed in the hospital beds. You know what I'm saying?
Brothers got teeth knocked out, the whole joint, bro. I'm telling you.
Talking about I love you, bro. I'll see you next week. Yeah.
I see you next week. Gotta go home and ice it up. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what it be. But when you really brothers, like, it's nothing, especially when you're
Right.
really trying to get to the truth of things.
Facts. So
Yeah.
just understand this. There's no hate for nobody out there, no group out there. I might have some sharp words for somebody, but just understand, like, yo, my man Billy the Kid in the movie Young Gun said, I never stole a horse from a man I didn't like. You know what I'm saying? So just understand, I never give strong opinions to people I don't have some respect for. I got love for all y'all out there, man.
Y'all keep talking bad about this 400 years, you're gonna get potato salad with raisins at the cookout, man. So y'all better just remember that. you gonna get served.
And that's why I got my own wife. I ain't got to worry about none of it. I can say what I want. I can go buy the groceries I want, and I'm okay. You know what I'm saying?
I don't want them holding out on me at the cookout.
No, I'm good. I just tell my wife what I want, and I pull up to the barbecue with my own plate, say hi to everybody. Still don't change the fact you gotta change some of that doctrine, but I love you. That's what it is, bro.
I want more than a wing at the cookout now.
Hey, I'm gonna be scared to eat at the cookout because the conversations that we gotta have over these next 6 months, like, this light work. The conversations that we got to start to have now for real, when we starting to see so much of prophecy fulfilled, when we starting to see so much of the world moving, it's not gonna be easy, right? It's not gonna be easy. but we got to have these conversations. We got to start to put everything on the table, because my fear is that everybody hasn't examined the entire text, and I'm learning that now. You know, you still holding on to verses. You're a verse champion. You're a proof text champion. But when we start to look into context and follow the journey of our people, conversation changes, and so we gotta reconcile a lot. We gotta do it kind of fast.
I think that the speed of that conversation is going to directly do with the speed of which we detach ourselves from this subconscious conversation of trying to get approval from the church and whatnot.
Man, that's a whole man. I'm sorry. Yeah, bro. You because you know my thought on that, and you're absolutely right.
Oh, feel free to expound, brother, man. You good?
Look, bro. Let me tell you this. All of the arguing back and forth, and I'm guilty of it sometime. Um, Maybe not so much with the church though, because they really blackball me. Like, they don't want to have no conversations with me. But that's not our mandate. I said this to Elder Yara. Like, you gotta let a Gentile be a Gentile. Like, some people just want to be Gentiles, bro. Like, let them be who and what they want to be. We still got a mandate. We can't even. Bro, I went on Berean's channel and I brought up certain scriptures. Not only did they have nothing to say, he just immediately put me in the back. And I was so shocked. Moore had to call me and be like, yo, that's what it is. That's you know, you gotta deal with it. Like, cause I was shocked, like what in the middle of the dialogue, all of a sudden you just put somebody in the back because y'all ain't got no answer. So playing around with that situation is distracting us
Hold up. What was the question? My bad. What did you ask him?
on Berean's channel.
Yeah.
I went into the Grecians and the Gentiles and the Israelites. And so I pointed out how when Paul is going to all of these places, he's going to Jews. He's going to Hellenized Jews, even when you look at the word Grecians.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't negate the ability of a Gentile to join, right? But we got to be honest and look at the text. When we look in Acts, that's what Paul's journey was. He was going to the what we would consider to be the Hellenized Jew. Now, were there actual Greeks and actual Goyim or actual strangers in that area? Yeah. And if those actual strangers chose to cleave on to Israel, they have that right. Right. But when they're actually going out, the text makes it clear. You know, if we go to Acts 6 and it talks about these Grecian widows,
Mm-hmm.
that word is Hellenist. It's not Hellen, it's Hellenist, which is a Greek speaking Jew. So you had these Greek speaking Jew widows that was arguing with the Hebrew widows. Once again, that doesn't negate that there could have been actual strangers amongst them, right? But the reason we know this is because Yeshua's ministry was to go to the lost Jew or those that were steeped in Pharisaical tradition.
Mm-hmm.
After that, then they go to get the Gentiles that have been Hellenized. Remember, he told them not to go to them. When Yeshua says, I go to another place, they say, where are you going to go? Are you going to go to the Gentiles? Are you going to go to the dispersed Gentiles? Amongst the Gentiles? Use the same word, but they're talking about the dispersed Gentiles, right? That means that their mission or their ministry wasn't to that yet. But once again, that doesn't negate the ability of a stranger to join to us. That's not the argument, right? But and I would say that we have to look at that at this way at different times as well. It doesn't mean, oh, you're a black person, or oh, you're black, so you got to be an Israelite. It's here's the gospel, and those that receive it, a lot of times they're going to be our bloodline descendants, or they're going to be people that cleave on, right? That's just how that works. I know people don't like that conversation. But when I presented that to them, there was nothing to say. You can't argue with that because that's what you see in the text. You see that in the scriptures. Paul is going to the synagogues, talking to the Jews, and in the meantime, he ends up interacting with Hellenists as well as Helen and gets arrested by Greeks. I mean, we can look at the entire conversation. It doesn't negate Yeshua's message. It doesn't negate any of those things. It just speaks to the actual climate of the day, which was these men knew that the northern kingdom had been completely divorced. And this has to be something that we really talk about. That northern kingdom really had been completely divorced. So Judah, Levi, and Benjamin was really kind of doing them bad, right? Hence why Paul is a Benjamite, right? That doesn't mean other tribes weren't among them as well, because I want to say Anna was from Asher. But for the most part, we see the core Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. And there is this huge discrepancy with them and the quote unquote Hellenists Jew, the one that has become Hellenized. If you read a book called The Hellenization of Judea, I want to say it is. It goes into detail about this. Anyway, long story short, people get mad. So that was the conversation I had on that panel. Berean says, does anybody got anything they want to say? Now, mind you, this is the topic that they were talking about. But because I presented it in this fashion, there was nothing else to say. Nobody had anything to say. Because now we're not talking about racist skin doctrine. This is the Most High has to keep his promise to Israel, but he also has to keep his promise to the world, which is those that can cleave onto this, if they have the desire to, they have that right. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. Y'all gotta ask who's gonna do that though. Y'all gotta be honest and ask who's really trying to have the testimony of Yeshua and keep the commandments. And when we start to look at that, we start to understand it's gonna be those who are epigenetically connected. And that's a whole nother conversation. But that was the argument. They didn't have nothing else to say to it, Yahuchanan, and you know, I know that probably makes me king heretic, but I would challenge everybody to look into the scriptures and tell me where I erred at.
You know, I know you couldn't come on without Judaizing, fam.
You know, I'm a Judaizer, bro. Like, what you mean? I'm the king zealot. Yeah, man. Interesting next 6 months. I will say that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But with that, family, we are approaching nearly 4 hours. I'm getting tired. I'm going to shut this thing down. One more time, I appreciate y'all for coming through. Appreciate y'all for what y'all had to say and what y'all had to share. And with that, family, I say peace and love.
I like the way this feel, yeah. Let my soul cry, yeah, yeah, yeah. Minister, we gonna speak from the heart on this one. I'm performing lyrical funerals, no obituary. I killed your boy and brought him back to life, pet cemetery. My anointing not based on attendance at a seminary. Scarlet witches, they attracted to the visionary. Everywhere I go, I bring the word with me, missionary. Soldier drafted in the war machine, military. Pay attention, what I'm saying to you, legendary. You got the demeanor of a front desk secretary. That mean you take the calls, but you don't make the calls. That's why you hate, cause ain't nothing fake about me at all. Now I dare you try to say that with a straight face. My delivery in tip-top, great shape. I'm too advanced for you, light years, space age. No evolution for you cavemen, stone age. I'm a thoroughbred, rock solid. I came from the bottom to the top, rock climbing. I grew up in the hood, pros and cons. That's that full court pressure when the amalanche roll out that stretch. Why can't you see it's not logical? And you live diabolical. Boy, your point of view smaller than hair follicle molecule. This for all of them that follow you, smoking all of them barbecue. When I pull up, your voice don't correct itself with no auto-tune. I got a whole nother level that I can enter whenever I gotta deal with the devil. I pick a whole nother method. I hear a whole lot of yapping. They wanna see my reaction. Really out here in the community making it happen. I don't really think they understand the dilemma. They ain't looking in the man in the mirror. I can't say it in the clearer. The plan is very simple. It's time to start playing in the temple. Before somebody come and put the can on your temple. Reaching like a baby with his hand for the nipple. The Grand Reaper coming with his hand on the sickle. In the van coming with a ram with it. With the van coming get him. I am so glad that I changed up. Made it out of where I came from. Watch for the slide and the hook of the slow ball, fastball, and that change up. That ghetto lifestyle, it changed us. Go back to visit, it ain't changed much. Only difference is now the way that my brain process information. And Satan, but after my license, day one, let me say something. Only reason that I'm still alive today because God's grace is amazing. Just another raisin in the sun. Dream deferred when things occurred. Now you getting served right on the curb like a lemonade stand. I just gave you the benediction, let the whole church say amen.